Stop.
I won't lose you.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Belle Was in Overprotective Love Relationship with Alfia Movie 2. Before we start, please go support VicMarVaz for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Belle is a male. Chapter 18, Second Encounter. Like peering into an abyss, it's scary but you can't stop looking. That's how she was, and I looked too much. Until.
Empty.
The people are blind, not in a physical sense but in an emotional one. Emotions are praised as something intrinsic to human beings, and never as something that causes blindness to reasoning and logic. For example, it was logical that a man or woman would find a behavior different from their own unpleasant. For example, it was reasonable for someone to refuse to do something they didn't want to do. Emotions completely overturned that logic and reason. A man in love or a woman in love might well embrace a person whose personality was opposite to their own simply because of a feeling of affection. It was logical and reasonable, ironically, to say yes to something you didn't want to do. All because of the feelings born from an emotion called love. You'd say yes to anything if the person asking was the person you loved. No matter how illogical or unreasonable it might be. For example, are you leaving? Yes, I'll look for someone. Be careful, I'll be back soon. Someone who illogically went out in search of love when it awaited him every day at home. I love you, Belle. Someone who unreasonably chose to repress with all their might the overflowing feelings they held for someone special in their heart. And I love you, Aunt. People are blind. The morning chill vanished by midday. Sunlight warmed the places and the wind ran through the hollows and streets. In the midst of that atmosphere, I approached a person. Who are you? My name is Bellcranel. The young man with red hair and blue eyes showed a bewildered expression unlike me, who displayed an artificial and suspicious smile. You're VicMarVaz, right? He nodded, which made me move closer to him. It was the person I had been looking for all morning. Understand? He retreated, but I eliminated that distance. I want you to make me a gun, a good one. The strangeness in his gaze turned to irritation, like a spectacle he had seen hundreds of thousands of times. In a displeased tone, he kicked me out. Get lost, I don't make magic swords. He turned around and walked away, leaving me behind in the middle of the street. I could only tilt my head, displeased. Is that so? I moved forward again, weaving through the people passing by. Then I grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. Hey, what the hell? Come on, I don't want that piece of junk. You heard me right, I want a good one. Let me go, you bastard. Yes, I dragged my new friend VicMarVaz along the street without anyone stopping me. The people who recognized me, mostly adventurers, turned a blind eye with a certain discomfort in their eyes. Let's talk business, my friend. We're not friends. With that exchange of words, I headed to a bar where I could chat comfortably with this overly enthusiastic young man. It goes without saying that he was a troublemaker from beginning to end, and even when I arrived at Mamma Mia's bar and we took a seat, he didn't calm down until Mamma Mia herself threatened to break his arms if he didn't shut up. Old man, what the hell do you want from me? I remained silent, fascinated by Mamma Mia's incredible and efficient ability to convince people. Should I just threaten to break their arms? There were things in this city that I didn't completely dislike. As my aunt said, violence is not the problem but the solution. You see, I said, placing the grape drink on the table, I need a custom weapon, and according to my research, you're quite good as a blacksmith. I know what you're thinking. Why is this hexa-looking, dignified jerk coming to me, a third-rate blacksmith, and not to a blacksmith god like my goddess or Goibniu? The answer to your question is easy. I slammed my fist on the table hard enough to make it shake, making sure not to break it and get a lecture from the terrifying owner of this place. Then I confessed my only weakness in this world. I'm poor. My heart sank, almost letting out a heart-wrenching scream at the tragedy that was befalling me. I'm so deeply in debt that I can't afford to get a quote for a weapon made by someone so prestigious. That's why I came to you, VicMarVaz-kun. Don't call me by my last name and drop the kun, it's creepy, understood Welfie. A vein popped out on his forehead, throbbing constantly. I thought for a moment it was going to burst, but it didn't. Don't look at me like that, I said, a little hurt by the hostility in her gaze. I just need a good blacksmith, one who doesn't charge so much. I don't need your magic swords, I have no interest in them. My magic is the strongest after all. You're the one from War Game, right? I saw it, and I can't help but wonder why you need a weapon. Even without your fists, you could easily take down any familia in Aurario without a gun. I smiled, almost blushing. Were they already that famous? I must admit it feels pretty good. To be admired, feared, and envied, it wasn't exactly a source of income that allowed me to live. I didn't need the approval of anyone other than my aunt, but it wasn't unpleasant to receive the attention of the masses either. Eyes that saw me as a villain or saw me as a hero of yesteryear. Things like that gave life a slightly bittersweet flavor. It's simple, I said, raising a finger. It's a weapon no one else in the world has, well, at least not here. The idea came to me from one of my grandfather's stories.
Yes,
Welfie looked at me like I was crazy, but I didn't pay any attention. Many people did, questioning my sanity with their stares. So, I asked, "You don't want to sign an exclusive contract with me? Come on, I'll make you famous." My good friend, looked at me suspiciously. He didn't seem so sure about accepting, as if his eyes were saying that the benefits of associating with me weren't clear. Rather, he almost seemed to regret getting involved with me in the first place. Was I really that bad? Well, I'm aware of my twisted personality. I didn't want people to like me, and I wasn't interested in making friends either. I just needed one thing: become strong. You don't seem convinced. Let me sort that out. I took a piece of paper from my suit, then spread it out on the table right in front of Welfie's eyes. "What is this?" he asked, his eyes showing curiosity. This is my statement." Welfie opened his eyes in surprise, then looked away so quickly I thought he would break his neck. "What are you trying to do, you madman? Get that out of my sight." Of course, my status sheet only showed one of my skills. The others were still in divine language. Besides my name and level, only one skill was visible to those who could not understand the divine language. "Why are you exaggerating so much? This is just my trump card." He turned back to look at me conspiratorially without even glancing at the sheet of paper on the table. Did he think I could blackmail him by checking my condition? Publicizing this so that he would be harassed by the great families was also an option. "Don't take me for someone so low," I pleaded, letting out a sigh as I pointed with my finger at the only skill written in Cranel. "Look, this is my offer." He looked at me suspiciously, but after a few seconds he lowered his gaze to the part of the sheet that I was pointing to with my finger. There, in cursive, was written the development skill luck. What the hell? I smiled, pleased to have caught his attention. I raised my finger and explained. "This ability, as you can imagine, brings me incredible luck. From winning bets to finding rare or lost things, for example, uncommon minerals." She swallowed, her eyes trembling, still staring at the status sheet. Then she looked at me, first without suspicion, then with doubt. "In short, in exchange for an exclusive contract, are you offering to find rare materials for my work? You're smart." Words were no longer necessary. What followed was a mutual agreement between two gentlemen prioritizing their own benefits. Like true friends, we shook hands. Early in the morning, when the cool dawn breeze still froze your cheeks with a breath. Let's see, there are too many. 1 week after forming an exclusivity contract between blacksmith and adventurer, I embarked on my first mission. Nerves filled my body the moment I set foot in the guild, right in front of the notice board. There were quite a few missions. The levels of danger varied, but all involved venturing into the dungeon, with the exception of a few that took place on the surface. What do you think, trainee? Choose a few fetch quests. With your luck, you'll finish quickly, right? Let's keep it quick for now. The fun will come after you're out of poverty. Certainly, I nodded a couple of times, totally agreeing. It wasn't like we were completely broke, but I had to take the bi-weekly payments seriously if I wanted to live a carefree life and not be tied down by a huge debt. I could scrape together tens of millions every 2 weeks on my days off after community service, but I still wasn't doing well. At this rate, if I stuck to just making occasional payments, I'd end up tied to a Rario for the rest of my life. That could even be the true objective of the old man beneath the city. Let's go for these 4 then. I sighed, as did my thoughts, and took 4 sheets of copper-colored paper. They were all missions that required the collection of medicinal herbs located deep within the dungeon. Satisfied and determined, I walked to the reception and consultation area. Along a counter and windows, beautiful young women were attending to clients from inside. I joined the shortest queue and waited patiently for my turn. Of course, I received countless stares, but I simply ignored them. He was no longer someone who went unnoticed, nor was it that he tried to hide things from the beginning. "Hello, good morning," a young woman greeted from the other side of the counter when my turn came. "How can I help you?" I remained silent while looking around. From left to right, all the receptionists avoided my gaze, even though I had clearly noticed them looking at me a short while ago. I looked back and it was the same. The people behind me averted their eyes, avoiding eye contact. The rows to the left and right were the same. Understand, I approached the only person who looked me in the eyes with a formal smile on their lips and a gentle expression. Yeah, the half-elf woman tilted her head slightly. Her brown hair, which didn't even reach her shoulders, hung like a pendulum in the direction she leaned. Her glasses, similar to those a teacher would wear, reflected the emerald green color of her eyes. She was quite beautiful. "Aren't you afraid of me?" I asked, a little dismayed. "You're very calm." The receptionist's expression showed slight bewilderment. She looked at me for a few seconds before flashing that perfectly polished smile again. Should I be afraid of him? We stared at each other, surrounded by absolute silence. My blank expression and her dazzling one clashed like opposite poles. I had to admit she was pretty good. "I want to take these missions. Please register me." Understood. We didn't say anything beyond that, and there was no questioning on his part about my sudden question. He simply took the sheets of paper while pulling out a thick old book, noting the serial numbers on the sheets, eliminating any situation where 2 adventurers took on the same mission. Similar to a record. Okay, they've been registered under your name, still haven't given you an alias. The next Denatus is coming soon, good luck. I took the papers back, my gaze never leaving his perfectly trained face. It wasn't just his smile, it was his eyes, his lips, everything, a mask of happiness made from sadness. I see, I didn't know that, I said, smiling. Something tells me I'll have a pretty good one, thank you very much, miss. Ina Tully, yes, thank you very much, Inason, goodbye, he waved goodbye. Even as I turned my back, I had a feeling he was still smiling. She was smiling, but even when she was smiling, she seemed to be crying. Poor woman. Only she knew what her heart was enduring, and I could only imagine how difficult her torment was. Although he must be quite a tough one, I do base my opinion on his gaze. I shrugged, it's not really my business. He didn't need to think about trivial things, he just needed to raise money. A lot of money. With that in mind, I went down the stairs and into the dungeon. There are two types of people in the world, those who follow their own desires and those who follow the desires of others. Bell was of the third type, one that didn't exist, or rather that still didn't choose properly. He was true to himself, true to his desires. He did what he wanted to do and said what he wanted to say. Someone whose characteristics definitely fit the first type of people, those who follow their own desires. However, their autonomy was not entirely pure. Part of his desires followed the desires of another person. Trainee, I've been thinking about it a bit. What thing? You know about my soulmate, Bell sighed. I was squatting in the middle of some bushes looking for a star-shaped medicinal plant. Working on it and having found a few, he spoke while gently plucking them out, taking care not to damage them. I know I said not to look for her until I solved my problems, but I want to see her. Now I understand that proposing to her back then was stupid of me, so I want to see her and apologize. I suppose so. And then introduce myself and then ask her name, listen to her voice. I see. Trainee's sympathetic voice echoed in his head, and although Bell knew it was useless to talk to her, he felt he needed to say it out loud. His confidant trainee would never be able to reveal anything about their conversations. That made her quite trustworthy even if she wasn't. What do you think? Should I suppress my desires or should I follow them? Even if you ask me like that, it's not my business. If I tell you not to go, how would you feel? Well, I would be discouraged, of course. Exactly. If you want an answer, always do the opposite of what you dislike. Not that I care, because you'll probably be rejected again anyway, fufufu. A disappointed sigh was heard. Bell wondered why he was surprised by such a cruel response from his confidant. It was an unwritten rule not to expect anything from a brat who enjoyed seeing him suffer. Forget it, he muttered, then turned his attention back to the medicinal plant. I'll concentrate on the mission. I don't have time to keep fumbling around for the required amount, so I'll take the easy way out. He stood up and came out of the bushes, holding several plants in his hands. Grow up, taking them from the carefully plucked stem, Bell imbued them with spiritual magic to make them grow. Soon, the plants, whose appearance was immature, grew until they bloomed with radiant beauty, releasing several buds. These buds grew into flowers the same as before, and the flowers released their buds again, which grew magnificently once more and repeated the cycle of reproduction. That's cheating, isn't it? Trainee questioned. I never thought my powers would be used for the benefit of some lazy bum with no sense of adventure. Pathetic. Be silent. Bell ignored her as she continued mass-producing the medicinal plants. She duplicated them until she reached the number required for the mission, and then some, which she then replanted within the thickets. I call this a safe production line, he said, displaying a satisfied smile. The ominous silence inside his head showed Trainee's clear dissatisfaction, but it wasn't something that bothered Bell. In fact, it was better for him if he remained silent. Okay, let's complete the remaining missions. With a radiant and satisfied expression, she set off in search of the remaining medicinal plants. There were no intense fights with powerful monsters. Those strong enough barely made him yawn, and those that weren't simply instinctively avoided the powerful presence that surrounded him. He was that kind of adventurer, that kind of existence. He possessed the power necessary to overcome on his own the floors unexplored by the great families. Alone and with a positive attitude, he dedicated himself to collecting medicinal plants to take to the delivery point. The area where the medicinal plants specified in the missions were abundant was divided from the 27th floor to the 45th floor. The three types were in different places interspersed between those floors, so rather than being complicated, it was annoying. Bell's luck helped him find each type of plant quickly, but going from one floor to another became tedious. That's why it took him 6 hours to complete the 4 missions and return to the surface to collect his rewards. Hey, what are you doing here? Ina looked at him, bewildered. Didn't you leave this morning? He asked, looking at the relaxed Bell on the other side of the counter. Did you give up? What? He said that but managed to glimpse the backpack hanging from Bell's shoulder. They were the backpacks meant to hold the supplies and items collected in the dungeon. Impossible. Did he collect all that in just 6 hours? These were missions designed for at least a week of exploration due to the distance between the different locations. She blinked, still unwilling to accept the undeniable truth. I've come for my money. She managed to return to reality when Belle spoke and placed the backpack on the counter, revealing its contents. Ina's eyes remained fixed, observing the large number of flowers. They are all there, and there are many more than were requested. He looked back at Belle, and noticing the impatience in his eyes, he coughed to regain his composure. I'm sorry, he said, picking up the backpack and carefully checking its condition. I'll appraise everything. I'll be back in a few minutes, okay? No problem. Ina turned her back on him and headed to the exchange area. Normally, a quick transaction would take place there, but due to the nature of the missions, it was up to her to verify the authenticity of the order. It took him 5 minutes and then he went back to Belle. I have confirmed that everything is in order. Okay, now about money. Tom, Belle received a piece of paper and his eyes stared at it. He had no idea what the hell he was supposed to do with it. Was the pretty receptionist handing her the trash to take out? She didn't mind, but it would be nice if she asked politely. What is this? Finally, tired of the deadened situation, he asked Ina, to which she responded with a smile. This is the address of the person who requested the mission. Go to this location, deliver the merchandise, and then you will receive your reward. There was silence, then an incredulous exclamation as a breath of relief. This is strange. Isn't the guild responsible for distributing the rewards? Yes, it usually is. Ina smiled awkwardly as she explained. However, this only applies to missions assigned directly by the guild. In this case, the 4 missions you accepted were from someone outside the organization. Yes, and in these cases, the guild only acts as an intermediary. We receive a small percentage depending on the danger and risk of the mission, and it is the person who requested the mission who makes the payment to the adventurer who took it on. Belle was speechless at Ina's explanation. His eyes showed pleasant surprise as he asked, is this some kind of tax or fee? Do they charge for this? Seriously, I should have asked more about the missions. If you'd like, we have an area that specializes in training adventurers. It includes a discount for being an adventurer if you're interested. Whoa, now I know why they have so much money. All that's left is for them to charge for entry to the dungeon. Ina's gaze, whose superficiality was absolute, indicated that he was not so wrong in his words. That's why Belle kept silent. He no longer wanted to know about the insatiable greed of those in power. Will they be lending, Belle? We need one. Something tells me that's not a good idea, trainee. Without a doubt, the power of money was terrifying. Belle, a poor man, felt safer than ever now. Thank you very much, I'll take this then. See you, I hope it goes well for you. He grabbed his backpack and slung it over his shoulder, turning his back on Ina and leaving the guild, an extremely greedy organization that charged for everything, even breathing. It was a place Belle would rather not frequent. Where are we going, Belle? It's a clinic, apparently. He walked through the city, occasionally asking a random person for directions. Finding directions was one of the few things he was terrible at, but he managed to solve it simply by asking, is this it? After walking through the streets for a while, he arrived at a rather ostentatious-looking clinic. Standing in front of the entrance, Belle surveyed the place. The most commonly used infrastructure in Aurario was simple, but the clinic opposite him even had a large part made of glass, which allowed one to see its products for sale. From healing potions to potions that maximize the senses. I see, so that's why they can afford to employ adventurers. Belle approached, leaning forward as he looked at the products displayed behind the glass. It's very expensive, so much so that only the first classes could afford to buy here. Deep down, he felt increasingly disappointed in Aurario, whose roots were money and the rich sucking the poor dry. It was nothing like camaraderie towards the oppressed when they found themselves in a similar situation of poverty, not so much. Well, luckily Naza makes potions for me for free. Not that she needed them because of her absurd regeneration, but she wanted to emphasize that very soon there would be a distribution of dual potions in the city, which Naza was developing at a price affordable to all classes. Thinking that, Belle entered the establishment. Only then did he stumble upon a scene he hadn't expected to see. What are you saying, Armid? It's in perfect condition. Do you know how difficult it was for us to kill the Cadmus? We almost died. I know, but 15 million for the skin is too much. Oh, but is there anyone who can bring you such a valuable item? This stuff is used to make good medicine, right? You should look out for your patients. A human negotiating with an Amazon, although it was more like clear extortion by the Amazon. Belle remembered her. He's from the Loki family. He had entered the place, but his presence was ignored. He decided to erase all traces of himself the moment his eyes caught sight of the people there. There was another Amazon and another human, oblivious to the business discussion. I would accept it, but the negotiations continued, with Belle watching, speechless and bewildered. I couldn't stop looking at her. I'm waiting for some missions to be completed, and I need to safeguard the money for when the person who took them returns. 15 million right now is impossible for me. Tayoni narrowed her eyes, waiting for the right moment. The Armid family is wealthy enough not to worry about money, but there were also times when they made a large investment in the production of goods. In those times, they set aside enough money to last until their products doubled their investments, so their expenses were limited to what was necessary. But Tayoni smiled. Armid had taken the bait. Displaying an unusual expression, he murmured somewhat forcefully. His lips were pursed unnaturally. If you give me time, I'll save up the money to buy it. I need the skin, it's very effective against chronic diseases. Is that so? Well, let me think about it. The way Tayoni smiled only made Armid clench his fists. He wanted to refuse and offer a reasonable price, but he knew very well that Tayoni was aware of his advantage. Only the Loki familia ventured to floors as deep as the 51st, which was where the monster Cadmus resided. The other capable ones, the Freya family, were so devoted to their goddess that they wouldn't even bother to lift a finger unless she ordered it. There's someone else. He stopped his thoughts. Armid had no connection whatsoever with that person, and she also didn't know if he would take advantage of the situation, just as Tayoni did. That's why he kept quiet and silent, because the only thing he could do was accept the ridiculous price that Tayoni demanded. Please give me a couple of weeks, she bowed her head in reverence. Her silver-gray hair fell like silver waterfalls at her sides. I'll get the money. Then, asking in that way, he heard a snort. Okay, I accept. Tayoni's voice, proud of herself, echoed throughout the place, but it will be 17 million for the reservation period. At that absurd statement, Armid bit her lower lip and nodded weakly. There was no way out of this dead end. Then she straightened up, seeing the uncomfortable expressions of Eyes and Tiona, who seemed to be judging Tiona's greed. Okay, she said with a lump in her throat. Please come back in 3 weeks. Okay. The business was concluded and Tayoni turned and left. Behind her came Tiona and Eyes, who bowed slightly in apology. In the shop behind the counter, only Armid remained. Her sorrowful gaze gave the impression that she wanted to release a couple of sighs in the form of tears. Will I have to take out a short-term loan? He wondered, his tone as low as the whisper of a breeze. I suppose. I wouldn't recommend it, it's no different than chaining yourself up, I think. Armid's body jumped, surprised and frightened by the sudden voice. Did a customer come in? He didn't even hear the doorbell ring and he hadn't sensed any presence either. Taken aback, she turned her gaze toward the source of the voice. There in the corner inside stood a young man of noble appearance and attire. He stared at her as if he were in an endless trance. A pair of rubbered eyes combined with peculiar snow-white hair. You, Armid said, recognizing him. Not doing so at this point was impossible even for hermits. He was the young man whose recent arrival in the city had caused uproar after uproar. The one who currently sat on the throne of the strongest in Aurario. You're the one from that night, but Armid didn't know him because of such events. His encounter with Belle dated back to just a few days after Belle's arrival, long before his name was on everyone's lips in the city. Armid's bewilderment increased as memories of that night surfaced in his mind. The disturbing, bloody appearance in which she found him, as well as the declaration of love and marriage proposal. An uncertain voice. It was extremely rare to see Belle showing a nervous side. His heart was pounding, and his eyes couldn't stop looking at Armid's, which seemed like the most precious pair of jewels in the world. I'm sorry, I came in and saw all that, so I deleted my presence so as not to interrupt. Yes, Armid was speechless, still staring at Belle's nervous face. The ruby red trembled uncontrollably, manifesting a torrent of emotions. It all continued for a long time. No one said anything, their words unspoken as they exchanged glances and their thoughts became overwhelmed. What's he doing here? Armid wondered. He's not going to propose to me again, is he? I couldn't understand the times and moments that had to pass for the person I had imagined to magically appear. The only possibility was the issue of marriage, but Armid was determined to give him another resounding and firm no. Or is he ill? If so, I must attend to him quickly, but... An ominous feeling gripped his heart and he could only remain silent while he waited for Belle to say something. He, on the other hand, was suffering from a breakdown in his thinking. What should I do? Her eyes are beautiful. Should I greet her informally? Oh, her eyes really are beautiful. Would it be strange if I told her that her eyes are beautiful? Forget about standing still without saying anything and staring at her. I couldn't even think straight. He never expected to run into the girl from that night so suddenly, so he was caught completely off guard. Moments like these required careful preparation beforehand, and Belle, who was ridiculously foolish in these situations, hadn't done any. Can I help you? Her voice is beautiful too, she thought. He imagined being woken up in the mornings by the soft, delicate tone of her voice, and for him there was no more beautiful scene in the world. It's definitely her. The woman Alfia would accept. I'm so sorry, he said, straightening his posture and forcing himself to regain his composure. I came for the rewards from these missions, but I didn't expect to run into you. Yes. Her eyes widened when she saw the slightly crumpled papers and the backpack slung over Belle's shoulder. She never expected the missions, which she had posted 2 days ago, to have already been completed. She wanted to say something and thank you properly, but Belle spoke before she could try. It's not what I originally planned, but it's okay. I've come to apologize for what happened that night. He approached the counter, maintaining a harmless and gentle posture. He didn't want to rush in and yell only to frighten her. Despite his obvious nervousness, he remained a gentleman with impeccable manners. Etiquette was one of his strengths if he so desired. I'm so sorry really, he said, bowing 45 degrees to her who was on the other side of the counter. I wasn't in my right mind that night. I rushed into things and was quite bold and rude with my statement. Armid observed the sincerity of his words and actions. Quite confused, she could only nod with a cute okay. She expressed no emotion other than confusion on her face, but her eyes certainly sparkled with a captivating gleam of indifference, like a porcelain doll overflowing with charm. How adorable. That action made Belle's heart leap like crazy. So, he said, captivating Belle with his voice, you said you're here for the reward from each mission, right? Ah, yes, that's correct. Belle nodded, his heart still in turmoil. He felt an overwhelming emotion filling every part of his body simply from having a normal conversation with Armid, his soulmate. Her noble expression overflowed with tenderness as her cheeks flushed and her eyes shone with anticipation. Please wait here. I would do it for 1,000 years. Armid turned around, but not before giving Belle a puzzled and suspicious look. He could only stiffen at her careless mouth. Idiot, don't talk too much. Simply putting him in that state was a feat few humans could achieve. Until now, it had only happened with Alfia and no one else. She stood there silently, cruelly berating herself in her thoughts. That is, until Armid returned, placing 4 medium-sized sacks on the counter. The metallic sound reverberated for a few seconds before her beautiful voice sounded again, blessing Belle. That's the payment for each mission. A total of 500,000 volleys. Belle's eyes widened. He was already happier than ever just being in Armid's presence, but thanks to his poverty, his happiness increased when he learned that he had earned 500,000 volleys in just a few hours. The guild should have verified that everything was in order, Armid said, pulling him from his reverie. But would you mind if I did a personal check? I want to make sure of the quality before I pay. Belle didn't hesitate to nod. Go ahead, I'll wait, thank you so much. Along with Armid's thanks, Belle smiled as he placed the backpack on the counter and waited patiently. Armid's actions, observing each plant individually along with her lovely reactions of amazement, were a sight I would never tire of watching. This is, after a few minutes of waiting, Armid let out a stunned sound. How is it possible to harvest plants that are damaged even before they start growing? She raised her head and looked at Belle, searching for answers. However, he just kept smiling, fascinated by Armid's adorable behavior. With that, he looked again at the plants on the counter, then spoke. The quality far exceeds expectations, he said, a nearly invisible smile playing on his lips. This is incredible. The quality of the potions will be infinitely superior. The chances of saving a life will increase by 50%. Belle was in a trance. It was small, but there was definitely a smile on Armid's lips. The beauty she exuded left him speechless, absorbed in what to him was perfection. I'll add a small bonus, Armid said, pulling him out of his trance. It won't be much, but please. There's no need. Belle, however strange and impossible it was, interrupted Armid. He placed his open palm right in front of her, indicating that she should stop. I'm only asking for what was originally offered. I apologize if I was impolite, but I overheard a large part of your conversation with the Loki Familia. You're short on cash, aren't you? Accepting that bonus knowing that would be a disgrace to me, so I politely decline. Armid lowered her gaze. The excitement of having obtained such good products was so great that she had already forgotten the big scam she suffered at the hands of Tyone. With a slight pursed lip, she nodded. I'm sorry, she murmured, somewhat dejected. I really need that item. He didn't think it was valid, but he said it anyway. He just thought it was unfair not to properly reward Belle's achievement, but he didn't even have the capital to do so. It's okay, don't worry, Belle said, smiling dismissively. He seemed a little less nervous now. It's for something important, isn't it? Otherwise you wouldn't give so much money. He nodded, saying that I was correct. He took a slight breath before explaining. Cadmus skin is rich in minerals and proteins capable of suppressing the decline of the elderly. It can effectively treat a chronic disease for which I have been unable to find a cure. I see, I'm no expert, but I can sense its importance. Yeah. It was strange, but before they knew it, they were both having a steady conversation. That alone gave Belle a sense of accomplishment. He felt he had grown in the short time he hadn't seen her. In that case, he suggested with a relaxed expression, why don't you cancel the deal with the Loki Familia? It's unfair that they're taking advantage of the situation to make a little extra money. Huh, I can't do that, they're the only people who can get it for me. Really, I don't think that's entirely true. Armid closed her lips, understanding Belle's clear hint. Her smile overflowed with confidence, as did her eyes that gazed at her with affection and gentleness. Everything about him said that all he had to do was ask for it, and whatever it was, he would have it. He's the strongest person in the city, he thought, staring at him intently. Someone who decimated the two strongest families in the city, annihilated the Apollo family, destroyed the Pleasure District, and according to rumors, declared war on the god Uranus. His personality was also something everyone talked about. He was someone who was guided by what he found funny or not. Everyone had that impression of him. And would someone like that like me? I didn't mean to be condescending, but Armid wasn't stupid. All she had to do was recall the marriage proposal that night and see the way Belle was looking at her right now to know that he was interested in her. Why? I know I look good, but I'm sure he has plenty of other women after him, so why me? She stopped thinking at that moment, concluding that there was no need to look for an answer. With a suspicious look, he asked, "You would accept the commission, is that what you say?" Belle nodded. "If that's what you want, I'll do it. There's no need to give in to such blatant blackmail, just tell them you found a new supplier. But the Cadmus will take 2 months to reappear. By the time that day comes, many lives will have been lost. That's no problem. You can tell them I'm your new supplier and that you're no longer interested in their offer. I'll bet you an arm they'll sell it to you at the normal price or even cheaper." Belle had a point. It was very similar to the mercantile warfare that was waged in the market streets. If one stall was selling apples for 100 volleys per kilo, there was a rival stall selling them for 90 volleys. Therefore, the first apple stall had no choice but to lower the price to 80 volleys. However, that was the catch. After repeating this back and forth a couple of times, the first shop would eventually sell the apples for 50 volleys per kilo, half the original price. Then the second shop would buy all the apples from the first stall and sell them at their own, bringing the price back down to 100 volleys per kilo. Armid didn't know whether to consider herself lucky to have caught the attention of someone as powerful as Belle. She had no intention of taking advantage of it, but she couldn't refuse the tempting offer either. "I understand," she said slowly, looking at him. "And your price is, you're not expecting me to accept that offer, are you?" "Please, I wouldn't be capable of that," Belle said, but turned away, clenched his hands into fists, and clicked his tongue as he muttered, "Why didn't I think of that?" Armid gave him a blank stare, incredulous at the way someone so strong was acting. She found it rather childish and funny. Ahem. After clearing her throat, Belle spoke. "Joking aside, tell me what's the normal selling price, not the exaggerated or made-up one, the real one. Give me your opinion as an expert on the subject." "How do you know I won't lie?" Belle smiled as he answered, "You don't have that kind of eyes." It was disconcerting that he said that without any hesitation. It seemed strange to her that he could categorize a person just by looking at their eyes. Slowly, he nodded. Under normal circumstances, Cadmus's skin fetches 7 million. If it's in perfect condition, it goes for 8 million. If it's damaged during transit, it's 5 million. Her words slowly left her lips, heard by Belle. He simply gave her a look while nodding, indicating that he believed her. "Okay, consider it done," she said, but Armid didn't sigh with relief. With a bit of caution, she asked, "What are the conditions?" Belle smiled, almost wanting to laugh at Armid's accurate judgment. He raised a finger, then explained. "I want it to be sold at a fair price. I've seen the prices of your products and they're exorbitant. At first, I thought you were taking advantage of your prestige, but I understood after hearing your conversation with the Amazon. You have no other choice, right? Selling the products at an affordable price will cause your production to collapse, and then there won't be any medicine left. Between selling or not selling, you chose to sell, even if not everyone had access to the price list." It was not uncommon in the city to find all kinds of corruption, blackmail, and even deeply bizarre topics. People had already given up on trying to change it because those with the power to do something were siding with the bad guys, so it was useless. All right, but Belle was different. He had the strength to do whatever he wanted and even force others to do what they didn't want to do. Even if it was extreme, if Belle deemed it necessary, he would do it. "If you accept my condition, I will provide all kinds of materials you request. Your prices will go down, your customers will increase, but more importantly, more people will be saved." Armid lowered her gaze, giving a nod. Her silver hair swayed like fine silk threads, gliding over her saintly ensemble as well as her cheeks and forehead. He bowed. "Thank you." His voice was trembling. "Thank you so much." She couldn't remember the last time she almost broke down in tears. Perhaps it was when she couldn't save the life of her first patient or the others who came after. Her eyes were burning. "Thank you so much." Behind the counter, bowing her head in reverence and with her hair hanging in the air, Armid Tezenaire sincerely thanked the young man in front of her. "Yes, you're welcome," Belle smiled. He genuinely wanted to reach out and stroke the beautiful hair in front of him, but he forced himself not to. Instead, he asked, "Can you tell me your name?" It was then that Armid raised her head, straightening her posture. The expression on her porcelain face was now calm, overflowing with an aura of relief and happiness. We call it Armid Tezenir. That's a beautiful name, Armidson. With a slight nod, Armid thanked him. Then she repeated the question, can I know yours? Oh, am I not famous enough? I feel a little hurt. I'd like to hear it from you. Armid's blunt words took Belle by surprise. His eyes widened, his heart raced, and his cheeks, slightly twitching, flushed a lovely soft red. My name is Belle. Her lips moved automatically, bellcranel. I see it's a good name, Armid said, leaning forward. Tell me, Belson. He placed his hands on the counter and stood on his tiptoes, getting as close as he could to Belle. Stretching his body as far as possible, he asked, why are you doing this? She wanted to add, is it because you like me? But stopped herself. Nothing good would come of bringing up the subject before even having a chance to address it. Why am I doing this? Isn't it obvious? Belle, on the other hand, wore a puzzled expression. Under Armid's gaze, he responded quite naturally. Your work helps people. There shouldn't be any reason or motive not to want to help someone who helps others. It's simple logic. For a moment, Armid's eyes trembled. Almost imperceptibly, they showed genuine surprise at the response. Contrary to what he expected, Belle didn't let his feelings get involved in the agreement they had just made. He remained impartial throughout. Is that so? Yeah. Almost as if she found it amusing, Armid smiled. It was slight, but her lips revealed that lovely pastel pink curve. They talked for about 4 hours when the afternoon was about to disappear on the horizon, and the sunset illuminated the city in a deep red color. Armid explained in detail the dates when certain plants grew, the places where they grew, and the correct way to harvest them. From all the plants he used to the seasons when he required the most production of medicines. A contract with fair terms for both parties was also drafted and signed. There was no longer any need to pay a percentage to the guild due to the direct agreement between client and supplier. Belle. He listened intently to every word Armid's beautiful voice spoke. His heart melted, but he managed to remain steady throughout the conversation. Then I'll see you tomorrow. The clinic had closed, illuminated by the faint moonlight. Rest well, Belson. Yes, I'll see you tomorrow, Belle said, his heart pounding like crazy. She felt a greater sense of accomplishment than ever before for having managed to form a friendship, however small, with her soulmate. Waving his hand in the air, he turned around and walked towards the glass doors. Oh, I forgot. However, he suddenly turned around and approached Armid. Yes, Armid tilted her head, confused. She thought she had finished everything essential regarding the supplier-customer contract. Scarson. Belle, looking her in the eyes, spoke, marry me. Slowly, like the short hand of a clock, Armid's lips curved into a cute smile. One of her fingers, soft and seemingly fragile, tucked her hair behind her ear. No, the next day, after crying all night after my second rejection, I met my beloved. Good morning, Armidson, I greeted with a smile. Even in the mornings you look beautiful. Good morning, she said with cold indifference. These are the materials I'll need today. Can I count on you, Belson? So cruel. I took the sheet of paper in my hands, my heart aching. After reading it and making sure I could bring everything, I folded it and put it in my pocket. I'll be back in a few hours. I turned away, my legs slumping and my posture slumped in a depressed grimace. Today, with my heart broken into 1,000 pieces, I headed to the guild. Wait. That was how it should be, however. Armidson's voice came from behind. I turned around quickly, looking at her, still. Her figure standing in front of the clinic, exuding dignity in a Gothic-style saint's outfit with purple decorations, captivated me. The cool morning breeze swayed her silver hair. Her long, thick eyelashes fluttered up and down in a captivating dance of shy glances. Thanks, I guess. She turned her eyes to the right, giving the impression that she didn't care much. Then she turned on her heel and went into the clinic. Standing in the middle of the street, I smiled. How lovely. The motivation I received from that wonderful divine view helped me finish the job in just 1 hour. I returned from the dungeon, showed the items, and received payment. I chatted with her for a bit, but decided to leave after noticing how busy she would be with drug production. I'm leaving, I said, intending not to interfere with her work. I'll see you tomorrow, Armidson. Yes, see you tomorrow. She gave me a smile, and that was enough for me. Thank you very much, Belson. Yes, it was for now. I left with a smile on my face, wandering through the city streets and stalls for a couple of hours before going to a bar and meeting up with my teacher. We were finally going to resume our classes about women after a while, so I was a little excited. I've made up my mind. In what? Trainee's voice echoed in my head. It had a dry yet curious tone. I didn't ask why he had been silent since yesterday and just answered as I walked towards the meeting point with the teacher. I will get rid of the debt as soon as possible. What do you have in mind? Nothing yet, but I'll ask the master. He must have some good advice for his dear disciple. With high expectations, I arrived at the bar, meeting the master, who greeted me with a harsh and grumpy expression. You're late. I'm so sorry, teacher. I clasped my palms together as I lowered my head, but there was no sound of satisfaction. Rather, his mood seemed to worsen. Seated at a table at the back of the place, we began our session on understanding women. First rule. If a woman says white is black when it's clearly white to you, say it's black. Verbal fights, even if you win, lose their meaning. There's no merit in it, only a multitude of problems. I nodded. I didn't need a further explanation about it, as I had learned quite a lot about my aunt's character. It was exactly as the teacher said, except my aunt possessed the power to change black to white and vice versa. My knowledge and experience on the subject was quite good. Second rule, don't forget the first one. We continued for a couple of hours after that, regularly ordering the occasional snack accompanied by drinks. I would ask and he would answer. How can I understand what you want? According to the teacher, I should observe his body. I should focus on his behavior and not pay too much attention to his words, otherwise I would end up confused. For example, if I want to know if a woman feels comfortable with me, I should read her body language. His feet would seek me out. When he laughs, he looks at me. He seeks to touch me. When he speaks to me, he looks at my lips. All those kinds of actions and behaviors betray a woman's attraction to you. If I were to have a partner, how could I understand her better? According to the teacher, he shouldn't try to understand her, but rather accept her, just as he would a friend. It was better to deepen a good friendship with my partner, since love and passion can be fleeting, but friendship is and will be lasting. Of course, only if it's a true friendship. How can I get a positive response to a marriage proposal? The teacher looked at me incredulously, then asked a few more questions. Apparently, he had already forgotten what I had told him a few weeks ago about my proposal. "You're an idiot," he said after telling her everything. "You really are a damn idiot, my dear disciple." According to the teacher, proposing marriage at the first meeting, when you don't know the person and that person doesn't know you, is so unrealistic and stupid that it only happens in love stories. It's even more stupid if that person finds you covered in blood in a dark alley, and it's even more stupid to tell them that the blood doesn't belong to you. He also said that it was stupid to propose to her in such a cold and dim atmosphere as that night. In short, you're stupid. I couldn't refute him, but I also couldn't help thinking that the teacher seemed very happy insulting me every 5 seconds. So, I said, feeling a bit discouraged, I returned to the topic at hand. How can I succeed? According to the teacher, persistence can often be annoying. It's also a very ambiguous topic. This gave rise to the question and controversial topic called, is insisting a way to demonstrate or to annoy? Be very careful not to confuse things, dear disciple. The teacher said. I nodded as I focused all my attention on his words. It's impossible to change the past. For now, the stupid marriage proposal won't be erased from that woman's memory. However, we can try to make her believe that the memory is unimportant. As with patience and care. First of all, don't propose to her again. You need to get to know her and let her get to know you better. Build a closer relationship so you're no longer seen as a stranger. It's okay to express your feelings, but it's wrong to try to force them on her. I lowered my gaze, unable to look the teacher directly in the eyes that now held a slight feeling of doubt as they fixed on me. What's wrong? Didn't you understand? No, that's not it. So I placed my palms on the wooden table and lowered my head, pressing my forehead to the cool wooden surface. Then I confessed. Actually, I already asked her to marry me for the second time. There was silence. Thanks to my enhanced senses, I could hear the cracking sound of something breaking. Perhaps it was the teacher's patience. When? He asked. With all the sorrow in the world, I gave an answer. Yesterday. What followed was an even more eerie silence than before. I was pressing my forehead to the table in apology, so I couldn't tell what kind of expression the teacher had, but I could feel his gaze. It was the look of someone who had lost hope in humanity. I'm fed up with this. Master, where are you going, master? The teacher stood up, almost sending the chair he was resting on flying backwards. I could only follow him while trying to calm him down, but it was useless. I'm leaving. I need to figure out how to fix your stupidity while keeping my head attached to my neck. Wait, we still need to understand the hints. It's useless. With your current level of stupidity, you're not prepared for that class. We left the bar, but not before leaving a small bag of money on the table where I had been with the teacher. The bartender's voice, thanking us and waiting for our return, came from behind us. Walking through the streets, I grabbed the teacher by the collar of his suit and pulled him into an alley. And let's see, you damned elf. I slammed his back against the brick wall. The building shook a little, but nothing happened beyond some debris and dust flying into the air. Let's get a few things straight, I said, grabbing him by the neck. You're not here of your own free will. I have your goddess's permission, so if I want, I can strangle you to death right here in this dirty alley and let your body rot. Don't you know how to fix my stupidity? It's not necessary. I just need you to guide me on everything I need to know to make a woman happy. I admit it's not my strong suit, but that's what you're here for. If you can't do something so simple, does your life have any meaning? The teacher's eyes became bloodshot from lack of oxygen. He was pressing on his jugular vein, so before he died, he would fall unconscious, unable to breathe properly. Her face, which was slowly losing color, distorted with an expression of agony as her hands tried to loosen my grip on her neck. It's useless. I pressed him harder against the wall, lifting him into the air. His legs kicked at the void, trying to push me away from him. How does it feel, head and Selland? Seeing his deplorable and pathetic appearance, I asked about something I had been curious about for a long time. What does it feel like to be on the side of the oppressed, the weak? I'm sure you had a lot of fun in your positions of power before I arrived. Was it fun to see others as mere ants or trash just because they're not on your level? How many people have you despised? How many have you hurt? How many have lost their lives at your hands, all because of your goddess's whim? HG Ugga. How does it feel to have a stranger appear out of nowhere and take all that away from you? I'm curious. I looked at him, and I could almost feel my lips distorting into a satisfied smile. The pale face, the bloodshot eyes with veins about to burst, as well as the agonized expression of Hedin Selland. It was interesting. I want you to know that those days are over. Push yourselves, scream, cry, bleed, fill your bodies with sweat and scars, physical and mental. It's time for the weak to become strong and the strong to become even stronger. I let go of his neck at that moment. The elf's body fell on its backside on the rough ground, and as it made strange and odd sounds to get the air it had been deprived of, I spat indifferently. If they can't do that, they'd better step aside. I left it there. I turned around and walked slowly toward the alley exit. Daylight was beginning to fade, bringing sunset. Oh right, then I looked over my shoulder at Hedin Selland, whose body lay slumped against the brick wall, his breathing heavy. How can I make money easily and quickly? I need to pay off my debt. You must have some good advice for your dear disciple, right, master? The teacher's eyes, whose surface was stained with red, glanced at me sideways. He slowly moved his lips and uttered a few words. Sell your services. I'm sure more than one would pay for that. After uttering those words with all his might, he fell unconscious. It seems the shock of drowning was too much for his body, even if it was at a high level. Well, it was me who did it after all. I left the alley after that, leaving the master there and walking back home. Tomorrow I should meet with Armidson again, then see Welf to check on my weapon's progress. Selling my services, then maybe I'd start a separate business from Jugamaru Kunz's. That night when Hedin had regained enough strength to stand up, he returned to Folkvanger and reported the situation to his goddess. Did he say that? Wow, things are getting interesting. Hedin remained silent as Freya rejoiced at the events. She didn't bother to show the slightest concern when Hedin mentioned his possible death at Bel's hands. Even so, he remained kneeling as Freya was bathed in the pale blue light of the moon filtering through the skylight in the room. So selling your services, An expectant and uneasy smile touched her lips. Of everything she'd heard from Hedin, that last part was the breaking point for Freya. Of course she disliked the topic of the marriage proposal, but all unhappiness was eliminated by that pleasant and valuable information. Do you think he'll do it? If you need the money, the chances are high. I see. Freya looked at the wine glass in her hand. The thick red liquid swirled around with the sway of her wrists. Gazing at the shifting surface, she let out a couple of passionate whispers, the intentions of which flew through the air. I want to know how much I can buy. Her body grew warm. He let his thoughts wander and create an endless number of scenarios with Belle, whose body he would soon buy. That's all for today. You can retire, Hedin, Freya-sama. Upon leaving Hedin, Freya stood up and lay back on the mattress. Her hands traveled to forbidden places, bringing her fantasies to life with her fingers. He barely slept that night. In the morning, after greeting Armidson and taking care of what I needed for the day, I began building my new business. In my hand, I held a hammer, and my target was the nails on the boards. It was a bit grotesque and tacky, but good enough to get noticed. I built a small wooden base and a sign explaining what the business was about. The handwritten lettering read, "Caresses and all kinds of services for sale." In the center, sitting on a chair atop the small wooden base, was me, the merchandise. We just have to wait. Belle, what the hell are you doing? What's necessary, trainee? What's necessary? I ignored trainee's judgmental silence and looked ahead. My stand was in the middle of a busy street, but that didn't mean I should have high expectations. More than anything, I had to be prepared for the possibility of not selling anything on my first day. It was normal for independent businesses to start slowly. You just had to be patient enough. Alfia is going to kill you, trainee said. I know, that's why I didn't tell him any of this. It was as clear as day that my aunt would complain, and she'd probably break a couple of my bones if she found out. It must be hard to see his beloved nephew go to such extremes, so it was best not to say anything and avoid his anger and suffering. An hour passed. Another hour passed. The day went by quickly, and as I expected, I didn't have a single client. That wasn't unusual, of course. I was prepared for that, but what was strange was, why is there no one here? From morning until sunset, not a single person had passed through this street. Wasn't it a busy place? In fact, even the usual stalls selling drinks, snacks, and more were closed. While he asked me about that oddity, hello, a voice arrived, soft and sweet, almost divine. I turned back to look at her. There, a beautiful woman concealed her face with a long hood. How did I know she was beautiful then? Because her gaze was very familiar to me. Is it still open? Silver hair and silver eyes, a divine face and a seductive body. I'd like to buy you. All day, please. I had my first client, a goddess, to end with. And from then on, I began my life as a seller of caresses. Chapter 19, Happy Unhappiness. There is nothing more real than your eyes that do not see me. There is nothing more real than your smile that is not because of me. There is nothing more real than this feeling that you cannot feel. There is nothing more real than this pain I feel when I see you. Alfia, XXX, Folkvanger, the headquarters of the Freya family as well as the temple of the goddess of beauty. The place, resembling a castle, was surrounded by 4 walls. It was hard not to classify it as a fortress. This is my second time here. Is this really okay? My time is worth money, you know, fufu, that's fine. Freya, the goddess who had arrived at my newly opened business with a sack of money, flashed a charming smile. It wasn't just her lips that smiled, her eyes did too. As she walked gallantly, still covered by a cloak and hood, she spoke softly. Money isn't a concern. Instead, I'd like to know how much I can buy from you. I like this goddess. For someone like me whose economic situation was disastrous, a person like the goddess Freya would always be welcome. Who wouldn't do it with a person who wastes money as they please? Well, that's a good question, I remarked, ignoring the hostile stares from everyone around me. I'm willing to do whatever it takes if the pay is good. I don't know, maybe cooking. I'm quite capable in all aspects. Is something wrong? No, the smile on her lips said otherwise. For a moment she looked at me in disbelief, but her eyes soon showed a feeling of amusement. Did you expect something different from my answer? Come on, he encouraged, pointing his thin arm forward. Why don't we go into my chambers? Yes, I'm tired of ignoring everyone's stares here. What's wrong with them? It's like I did something wrong. You can ignore them, they won't do anything to you. Oh, I would like them to try it. Whatever the case, the family atmosphere in this place was awful. Many fought to the point of losing limbs, and yet they still looked at me. Crazy people, what's wrong with them? They want to get the attention of their goddess, I suppose. The trainee. Be patient with them, Belle, they're just poor offspring who can't get laid. It's normal that they hate and envy you. What the hell are you talking about? I sighed. Nothing around me was normal, not even the goddess in front of me who was guiding me to her room with a unique sway of her hips. Or had I seen something similar? I didn't have time to think about it. Come in, I hope you like it. I entered cautiously. The interior was worthy of being called a sanctuary, filled with colors that were gentle on the eyes. One could easily lie back and breathe a sigh of relief. She's really rich. It was here that I asked myself a question. Between the guild and the Freya family, which one had more money? The balance was beginning to tip towards the Freya family. What do you think? The goddess's voice reached my ears. Do you like it? I often spend my nights here when I'm not at the Tower of Babel. You could think of it as a vacation room. Well, it's nice, that was strange. If this was designated for vacation use, I didn't want to imagine what it was like for everyday use. However, what was even stranger was happening right in front of me. Why are you undressing? Does it bother you? I feel more comfortable this way. Already, if I could see myself in a mirror, my expression would be impossible to describe. I had the urge to turn around and leave, but I already had a large amount of money in my pockets. There was no going back. I stared blankly at the delicate, slender figure of the goddess. Her fingers wandered slowly towards the corners of her garment. The first thing to fall was the cloak covering her body, then the strange dress clinging to her skin that barely covered the indicated places. I had to look away when that skimpy garment was removed. I didn't feel comfortable seeing the nakedness of a goddess of beauty, although I could assure you that it would be the same with anyone. It's different from when my aunt gets naked. Why? Whatever it was, the point is that I felt uneasy. It wasn't illogical since I didn't consider myself a degenerate who enjoyed seeing a woman naked. Ara, why aren't you looking at me? I'm starting to have a little distrust in my body if you avoid it so carefully. No, that's not the point. Am I supposed to be looking at you comfortably? A woman's nakedness should be sacred if you ask me. But I want you to look at me. Isn't this part of your services? It seems like you're scamming me. That really wasn't the point. Why was she referring to my services that way? I was supposed to be selling my famous massages, which even someone as strict as my aunt loved, as well as my cooking. I believe there's a slight misunderstanding, Goddess Freya, I said, still without looking at her. The menu I offer doesn't include this type of service. How should I put it? I would have to add a small bonus. I said that trying to scare her. He had received 500,000 volleys as an initial payment, which included a package of a massage and a properly prepared meal. Here, I took a small pamphlet from my jacket and offered it to her. As she took it in her hands, I kindly explained. These are the packages I offer, along with their prices. As you can see in the last section, you purchase the Golden Rabbit package, which includes a short shoulder massage and a full meal. If you look a little further down from that section, you will see a small clause written in small print that explains an additional charge in case of any unforeseen event outside the package. This was my insurance. I wasn't so stupid as to ignore possible unusual scenarios. This one, for example. I had no interest in seeing the naked body of a woman I didn't love, so the extra charge was my safeguard. I see. The eyes of the goddess Freya meticulously scanned the small pamphlet I had made myself. It should be noted that the names of the 3 packages Copper Rabbit, Silver Rabbit, and Gold Rabbit were trainees' idea. Exactly then, as you can understand, if you want me to look at you, you'll have to pay extra. Since I know you don't want that, I ask that you dress appropriately. How much? I stopped for a moment. I still didn't look at her body, and although I looked into her eyes, she had perfect control over my gaze, making me only look at her face. That's why I was able to notice the seriousness in his face. Foolishly, I flashed a nervous smile as I thought I had misheard. However, the goddess Freya gave a casual smile as she slowly moved her lips and asked once more, "How much is the additional charge? I'll pay it." At this point, beads of cold sweat trickled down my forehead. Just seeing his silver eyes was enough. They were a pair of eyes that showed not the slightest doubt. Well, there's nothing like a fixed price. I suppose I decide it depending on the situation. So, how much do you think a glance from your pretty eyes upon my body is worth? This situation was dangerous. Wasn't she going to back down? Her passionate gaze confirmed it. Trainee, any options? He only asks for 1,000,000 volleys. Even if he accepts, you still come out ahead. Is that so? My trusted companion said so, and although I had no desire to listen to her, I was forced to do so. Slowly, and without looking at her body, I answered, 1,000,000 volleys, I think, made. I swallowed. Even if, as Trainee said, I came out ahead, I still felt uneasy. However, the eager smile of the goddess Freya demanded that her purchase be put into action immediately. I slowly lowered my gaze to her body. The first thing that entered my field of vision were her breasts, round and firm, adorned with pink nipples. The white surface of her skin shone with a seductive aura. Then, moving even lower, I passed her flat, flawless abdomen. Her waist boasted a divine curve that ended in her wide hips, which led to a pair of well-proportioned legs. Between those two legs was what many mortals would call the Garden of Eden. Phew, not bad at all. I guess she's not a goddess of beauty for nothing. Trainee, could you shut up? Don't let it get to you so much, Belle. You see, the body of a goddess of beauty, no matter how many men she has devoured, will always remain a virgin. It's common knowledge. And when the hell did I ask that? What? Honestly, this is what I earned for playing businessman. Business wasn't exactly my strong suit either, it seems. Fufu, do you like what you see? I didn't answer him out of politeness. Although I would have appreciated a little more politeness from her, it wasn't flattering that she was modeling her body for me, showing off her shapely back and round bottom. Well, as if she had enough fun, she walked to the bed in the center of the room. I guess I'll make use of that massage of yours. I'll add that it's a shoulder massage. The smile she gave me made me nervous. She moved her body slowly and lay down on the mattress. Is this position okay? No, well, yes. She pressed her breasts against the sheets, resting her chin on both arms crossed upwards. From that position, she gave me a flirty look, urging me to do my job. This is so I can pay off my debt, I told myself, and with the right determination, I took off my shoes and got into bed. Before my eyes stood the figure of a goddess, completely exposed. Slowly, I straddled her lower back and placed my hands on her shoulders. Anne. Please don't make strange noises. Do I have to pay for that too? My previous experience told me that I would pay if I said yes, and that once I paid, those noises wouldn't just be noises anymore. So I kept quiet and continued with my work. Her skin, even though it was an area usually considered tough like the shoulders for everyone, was still soft. I applied pressure with my fingers, massaging with a force that was considered enough for her body trembled, and occasionally she let out sweet moans and hot gasps from her lips. This is going beyond what I had planned. Look on the bright side, you've already got 5,000,000 volleys in your pocket. At this rate, that debt can be paid off in a couple of years. Certainly. He couldn't deny that fact. Even though it was already getting dark, he had managed to generate more than 1,000,000 in just one day, although it was actually less than a day. How are you so good at this? The goddess Freya asked in a heated tone, almost sweetly whispering a seductive melody. Those sounds stopped when I finished the massage. I skillfully got off his back and sat down at the edge of the mattress, putting my shoes back on. Only then did I stand up and look down at her. The expression on her face said she was completely satisfied with my service without a single complaint. I thought this would end things, but contrary to my expectations, the goddess Freya weakly raised her arm. With a trembling index finger, he pointed to a door. The kitchen is there. It's not very big for obvious reasons, but it has everything you need to prepare whatever you can think of. So if you want to eat, huh? I sighed, shrugging my shoulders wearily. Fine, it's part of the service. Any suggestions? Surprise me, I figured as much. I rolled up the sleeves on my arms after taking off my jacket and hanging it on a coat rack. The interior of the kitchen was quite simple, yet it exuded elegant design. As Freya said, it was small. Spacious enough for one person, considering it was inside a room. Let's see. I checked the pair of built-in cupboards. They contained all sorts of condiments and spices. The refrigerator, whose mechanism was powered by magic stones, was meticulously organized. Small packages filled with meat along with a label indicating the type. We'll have some chicken and ham. Is there any melting cheese? Yes, there is. I opened a drawer and took out a kitchen mallet and a knife. From the cupboard, I took salt, pepper, and minced garlic. One frying pan is enough. Took at least 20 minutes for the chicken breast to defrost. It was a setback, but while I waited, I cracked a couple of eggs into a glass bowl. After adding a pinch of pepper and salt, I whisked them. This is enough to soak. Now do you have breadcrumbs? I opened the cupboard and inside a glass jar was the breadcrumbs. I took some out and spread it on a plate. Good, all that was left was to wait for the chicken breast to thaw completely. The dish itself was simple, but something told me that whatever I prepared, Freya would enjoy it. There's no reason to try too hard, she's not my aunt nor is she Armidson. Belle, I'm hungry. Trainee, shut up. With that in mind, when the chicken thawed, I nimbly ran the knife through it, and after hitting it with the kitchen mallet, rolled it up over the ham and cheese. The small rolls were soaked in egg and covered with breadcrumbs, then dropped into the pan of oil over medium heat. Exact. After the end of the dinner, one where Belle personally fed a sweetened and pompous Freya, the latter asked the former, "How much to spend the night with me? In what sense? I'm talking about making love, not all the money in the world." Freya snorted in annoyance at Belle's response. It was thanks to her powers as a goddess that she knew those words weren't a lie. It wasn't even his words, it was everything about him. His eyes, whose brightness expressed a seriousness unbecoming of his laid-back reputation, as well as the rough expression adorning his face. "I admit I'm an idiot when it comes to women," he said, still feigning genuine seriousness. "But I'm not ignorant of carnal relations, and the mere fact that you would suggest something like that to me offends me." The day ended and gave way to darkness. Moonlight filtered through the skylight and bathed Belle's body. Sitting in a comfortable armchair, he warned, "I'll let it go this time, but there won't be a second time, Goddess Freya. You do well to heed my advice." Freya analyzed the situation. The atmosphere around Belle seemed to begin to distort. Although his divine powers were sealed, his eyes were able to perceive that mystical presence within him. Furthermore, her bright and translucent soul took on the appearance of a tidal wave of uncontrollable hostile emotions towards her. "I understand," she said with a smile. "Your self-control is incredible. Could you tone it down a little? My children could start to suffer from post-traumatic stress." "Have you noticed? I'm still a goddess after all." Belle nodded, and the next second all the invisible distortion vanished. They were supposed to be in a place isolated from the outside, but for some reason Freya felt as though she heard several sighs and gasps. "The package is finished." Belle stood up, adjusting his suit. His action only indicated that he was about to leave. However, Freya asked again, "I'll forget about spending the night with you. Instead, tell me how much for a kiss." "It's not something that's for sale, nor does it have a price." Belle then explained as gently as possible that his first kiss would be given to the woman of his dreams, and that they were exclusively for that person. "I see." Freya outwardly took it lightly, but inwardly she was about to reach her breaking point. The mere mention of a woman capable of attracting Belle and not her infuriated her. Every second destroyed her dignity as a goddess of beauty. If only I could get rid of that nuisance. His thoughts were conflicted. The only reason Belle spoke freely about his interest in another woman in front of Freya was his absolute confidence. It wasn't arrogance, but the absolute certainty that if he so desired, he could eliminate any risk to his beloved with just a snap of his fingers. "I know who he is thanks to Hedon, but it's impossible he could have followed Belle without being discovered. This is a warning from Belle to me, almost as if he's deliberately showing us the things we shouldn't dare touch." It wasn't just his absurd, extraordinary power, it was also his twisted intellect. Freya found it hard to believe that such a personality could coexist with a soul as beautiful as Belle's. That fact alone makes me even crazier for him. He's perfect for me, my precious otter, whom I've waited for so long. He looked at Belle suspiciously. Right now, I hated the fact that I was untouchable in every possible way. "I'll give you 100 million. Without thinking, she clung to the only hope that kept her calm, Belle's extreme poverty. "It's fine if it's not on the lips, but I want a kiss. 100 million is my offer." "Ha, you're really intense, I've told you that." 200 million, made dignity, to hell with that. Belle wasn't stupid enough to turn down 200 million volleys. He immediately adjusted the collar of his suit and approached Freya was resting her body on another expensive-looking armchair next to Belle, but when she saw him approaching her, she stood up instantly. His heart was beating uncontrollably, and for a moment he really thought it was going to jump out of his chest. Belle's cold gaze left her in a special trance, completely at his mercy. She desperately wanted to be dominated by the man before her. As if it were perfectly normal, Freya slowly closed her eyes. Her vision went completely dark, but for some reason she could still see Belle's imposing silhouette. HG. She let out a cute little gasp of surprise when Belle took her in his arms. His right hand slid gently down her lower back while his left hand held her cheek delicately. The proximity made Freya's heart leap like crazy, and then she felt a warm, soft sensation on her forehead. Belle's lips had gently kissed that spot. It only lasted a few seconds, but for Freya it was a pleasurable eternity from which she did not want to escape. I await those 200 million, Goddess Freya. Why yes, my love. I am not your love, saying it so directly was useless. Freya's eyes, already open, were moist with ecstasy and emotion. It wasn't the look of someone sane. Indeed, she was trapped in her own fantasies, which were so strong that they denied reality. Well, I must go now. Thank you for your kind patronage, Goddess Freya. When Belle bowed slightly as a sign of respect and gratitude, Freya lunged towards him. The goddess's benevolent arms encircled his neck, and drawing as close as possible, she asked in an enchanted tone, "How much to sleep with me? I thought I warned you." For a moment, Belle prepared to completely destroy the Freya familia's headquarters. However, the goddess herself smiled and dismissed his plan. "That's not it. Just sleep, no intimacy or carnal stimulation. How much for us to sleep cuddled up tonight?" Belle looked into her eyes and remained silent. Instead, his thoughts became noisy. Just sleep. If she gave me 200 million for a kiss on the forehead, how much would she be willing to give for this? What? Belle asked for 1,000. 1 billion, even. I know that's absurd. Don't be an idiot, just look at her. Those eyes say she'd give you even more. Hey, don't you think she could pay off the debt in full if you asked her? Can you hear yourself talking? Paying my enormous debt just for sleeping? Not even my grandfather would say such nonsense. Well, you're right, but spit it out. Belle, just the tip. I'm sure that'll be enough to pay off the debt. What? At that moment, one where only a second had passed in reality, Belle shook his head from side to side. The brief conversation with his faithful companion made him nauseous. "I'm sorry, but I promised to arrive early tonight." He made an excuse and pulled away from Freya's embrace. Freya, completely disillusioned and relieved of her excitement, let out a devastated sigh. "I see, but perhaps another time." Belle nodded at his words. "Yes. We could come to an agreement for my next business event," he said, trying to downplay the fact that he was selling out for money. "Until then, good night, Goddess Freya." "Yes, you can be sure of that. Rest, Belle." Belle left the place with a satisfied smile, pleased with the day's juicy profits, and Freya displayed the same smile, satisfied with the experience of a single day. XXX. It was 9 o'clock at night. The lanterns placed at equal intervals illuminated the path of the few passers-by who strolled through the city streets. Many couples holding hands, children running home where a warm welcome from their parents awaited them. In that atmosphere, Alfia walked in silence. Her eyes didn't wander to any side, only straight ahead. The lovey-dovey couples, the children running around with innocent smiles, nothing caught or captured their attention. "Hey, miss. Wouldn't you like to join us for a while?" She didn't bother looking at the trash that stared back at her with lustful eyes. They were irrelevant, and despite the urge to get rid of them, she simply kept her attention straight ahead. His target was in a straight line. "Tusk, did you just ignore me? Hey, gospel." The street erupted in screams at the sudden sight of a human body crashing through the wall of a house, but Alfia kept walking. Her flawless appearance, beautiful face, and refined aura captivated nearly every man. However, she was at a level of beauty where one would simply say, "No, she's out of my league," and they would automatically give up. If you added to that the distorted space that surrounded her, only someone completely stupid would have the audacity to try to pick her up. It was like that throughout his entire journey. In complete silence, he stopped walking until he reached his destination. "Belle, hello, aunt, on your knees, why yes." Alfia looked at him with cold eyes. She looked nervous as she listened to what Alfia said, getting on her knees and bowing her head. Seeing it that way, Alfia asked in a dry tone, "Where have you been? I thought I told you to come back early today. Are you blind? It's dark. The dinner I painstakingly prepared got cold. What have you been doing though?" "Auntie, I have a good explanation. I heard about your business, it's nice." Belle's heart stopped for a few seconds. His throat went dry, unable to form any words that could serve as a response. How did he find out? She wondered, but after thinking for a little while she sensed that perhaps, just perhaps, Haruheim was responsible. Although it was actually just a rumor from a citizen who happened to pass by Belle's stall after it had been bought by Freya. What doomed him to failure was not dismantling said post, which after Freya's guard stopped denying passage to citizens was seen by half the city, forehead against the ground. Yeah, he obeyed and lowered his head until his forehead touched the cold concrete. Then he felt Alfia's foot on the back of his neck. "You will tell me who the bitch was who dared to buy you. You will also tell me what you did, and you will tell me where that bitch is located. Say it quickly while I remain polite." He said that, but increased the force with which he stepped on Belle to the point of beginning to crack the ground. He wasn't using his full power, but it was more than enough to blow the head off anyone below level 5. Okay, but can't we go somewhere more private? It was then that Alfia looked around. The few people still in the street stared in stunned silence at the scene of a beautiful woman stepping on the back of a young nobleman's neck. He looked at them all indifferently, not caring much. His anger was not something that could be calmed by just the gaze of others. However, she took a slight breath and removed the heel of her boot from the back of Belle's neck, freeing him. "Okay, let's go home." Belle stood up, dusting his suit, and nodded at Alfia's commands. His neck ached a little, but only a little. He walked forward with downcast eyes. He didn't have the courage to look Alfia in the eye, but Alfia extended her arm. "Take my hand, that's an order." Thus, like a scolded child told by his mother, "We'll talk at home," Belle was guided home. Alfia's hand was soft, but there was no attempt in it to put pressure on his. "She's angry." "I warned you, didn't I?" "Cheer up. As long as it doesn't blow your head off, you can regenerate any part of your body without dying." They walked silently through the illuminated streets, side by side and holding hands without speaking at all. On the other hand, Trainee's consolation was hardly encouraging. XXX. Upon arriving at the house, Alfia dragged Belle to the room they shared, ignoring the worried looks of Zeus, Mayach, Haruheim, and Naza. Zald was still on vacation, so he avoided such a tragic scene. "Okay, talk." Inside the room, Alfia threw Belle onto the bed. There wasn't the slightest trace of resistance nor any complaints. Belle just thought there was nothing he could do, and whatever was going to happen, he would have to endure it. "Tell me everything. If I detect even the slightest lie, it won't end well for you." Belle swallowed hard as he nervously shifted in bed. It wasn't fear, just a deep terror at the thought of Alfia despising him for life. On the other hand, while Alfia was furious that her beloved nephew was in the clutches of a woman who was not her, the core of her anger lay in the action that Belle took. She couldn't bear the thought of her family, her beloved sister's son, resorting to such despicable acts as selling her body. The very idea outraged her, and she would rather accept a rejection from Belle than see him selling his services. "Okay, where do I begin?" Belle flashed a silly grin, but contrary to what he expected, Alfia delivered her sentence in a cold voice. "Make the slightest joke and I'll rip off your arm." Thus, in a completely serious tone, Belle narrated everything that happened with Freya as well as the source of the idea. Everything went wrong from the start. The instant Belle mentioned the part where Freya paid him to see her naked, his own head pierced through the mattress, the wooden base, and the wooden floor. Belle Sama. Haruheim, who was getting ready for sleep after praying a little for her master, looked incredulously at Belle, whose face was stuck in the ceiling. His room was right below Belle and Alfia's. "Haruheim, good night. I'm sorry about this. I'll fix it tomorrow." With a pained expression, Belle offered his sincere apologies. His eyes betrayed a sense that everything was screwed and that he would be incredibly lucky if he even made it to the next sunrise. Haruheim couldn't say anything more because Belle's face suddenly disappeared. She only managed to hear the sounds of things being torn to pieces upstairs. Whether they were bones or furniture, I didn't know. Belle Sama. He forgot about sleeping and resumed his prayers to his beloved teacher. XXX. I have become irrational, dependent on my emotions. Of course, I was furious that Belle would do something as stupid as sell her body, a searing pain that was killing me. In a way, I hated the feeling. When I finished listening to the story, the first thing I thought about was destroying the Freya family. I wanted to destroy them one by one until I reached Freya and broke her neck. Such thoughts ran through my head. I've become hysterical. Was this my love for him as a woman or my love for him as a family? It felt like a mixture of both. Naturally, I also had the urge to hit him. The brief thought that perhaps a blow would make him understand what he had done wrong crossed my mind. I'm being blinded by my emotions. Control yourself, you're not like this, Alfia. I told myself that, but the effect itself was useless. A slight burning sensation took hold of my eyes. I didn't like the strange feeling of moisture growing and distorting my vision. Aunt. Don't come any closer. Broadly speaking, I understood it. Who would accept as rational or healthy the feelings I have for Belle? Many would laugh while others would show expressions of disgust. I was so lost in his eyes that I overlooked the fact that he wasn't looking into mine, not the way I wanted him to. I would blame him for getting my hopes up, but it was me who got my hopes up. Loving him hurt. It only caused pain. The certainty of knowing he doesn't love me the way I love him hurts me every day. The hope of loving him is turning into nothing but frustration. Maybe I should forget about it, but it's difficult after so much time. Should I have been direct from the start? I could only ask myself that without any hope of knowing the answer. It's funny, but also cute. When you truly love someone, even if there are reasons to leave them, you look for a reason to stay. Belle, please don't do something like this again. Yes, it won't happen again. The room was a mess. I had taken out my anger on every piece of furniture within reach, avoiding touching Belle. Now she just looked at me with pity in her eyes, nodding shyly. Thank you. I smiled gently at that image of her. I knew he could never see me the way I see him, and although it hurts to have to accept it, it's inevitable to feel this sadness. My heart still beats as strongly as the day I first saw him, but what does the heart know of fears? Of the fear of not being loved in return. Just keep loving despite the pain. I'll sleep in the next room. I stood up, a little unsteady. I wasn't weakened, and my illness was cured long ago, but for some reason I've never felt more vulnerable than I do now. I'll go with you. No, I refused his help. I didn't have the nerve to ignore the pain in my chest for just one night together that would never amount to anything. Rarely, she just wanted to fall asleep between the sheets. There are more rooms, take one of those. Good night, Belle. Seeing him with that somber expression hurt me. Deep down, I longed to be pampered. that he would take me in his arms and carry me by force to the bed, and that then, while I rested my face on his chest, he would caress my hair, falling asleep next to each other only to wake up to the sound of birds and the warm atmosphere caused by the sun's rays, to greet him with a smile and have that greeting return to me. Let's talk tomorrow, right now I just want to rest. Yeah. However, I couldn't untie the knot in my soul. Aunt, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. That night I cried for the first time in years. I lamented my powerlessness as well as my feelings which did not reach Belle. XXX. He who lives in love dies full of illusions, he who lives full of illusions dies in reality, and he who lives in reality longs for an illusion. It is an inevitable fact. Belle and Alfia's relationship stalled for a week. Belle could barely hold a proper conversation, and Alfia was quick to nip any advances in the bud. They slept in separate rooms, ate on opposite sides of the table, and took separate baths. Emotionally, Belle was unaffected. However, his mood plummeted to depths that humanity could hardly reach. He hated himself for having saddened his aunt. Every morning when she ignored him, he drove a rusty stake into her heart. Haruheim couldn't do much for him either, because when she tried to mediate between them to make them reconcile, Alfia blew up the room with a gospel song and went to her bedroom. That happened. Dude, don't you think my life is pathetic, I suppose? Wait, why are you telling me this? I'm just a simple blacksmith, don't drag me into your protagonist problems. No, how could I be the protagonist? I'm obviously the antagonist. Beating up villains is more my thing. This whole helping them find the right path thing is rubbish. Living beings learn through hard knocks. Dude, I'm trying to make a legendary weapon here, can't you shut up? You'd better come back in a couple of hours. Go after that girl you told me about a week ago. Sigh. Belle sighed. It wasn't so easy to get close to Ahmed, and the way she drew a clear line was quite obvious. You could hardly take her hand without getting slapped in return. I must be patient. He let out another sigh as he rubbed his temples with his fingertips. The armchair where he was resting proved quite comfortable for his back, allowing him to calmly watch Welf hammering a piece of red-hot metal. Are you really capable of shaping that metal? It was quite a feat to bring it down from the 67th floor, you know. I don't know, it's the first time I've seen this kind of material. However, if I manage to shape it, it will definitely be a superior weapon. Maybe even better than my goddesses. Lo? Belle smiled at Welf's eager grin. They had talked about their love interest just a few days ago. Belle had forced Welf to tell him about Hephaestus after telling him about Ahmed, and he already had an idea of the excitement and intentions behind that smile. If it's better than your goddesses, will you confess to her? Confess. Welf raised an eyebrow suspiciously. The heat from the forge warmed everything around him, so sweat ran all over his body. Giving another heavy hammer blow, he spoke with determination. I have already confessed several times, but I have been rejected. Brother, I understand your pain. Don't compare me to you. Unlike you, if I manage to create a weapon better than hers, she'll be my wife. She's already accepted it. I just need to work hard and hone my skills beyond divine. And what's this feeling of defeat? Well, never mind. Anyway, isn't that amazing? Fine, I'll help you imbue that weapon with my spiritual energy so you can overcome your goddess's weapons and make her your woman. Trust me, brother, I'm not your brother, but I accept. Welf said with a certain enthusiasm. The sound of the hammer striking the metal and making sparks dance in the air resonated more loudly than, showing the determination within him. He still thought that the young man who was watching him with a mysterious expression was still quite strange and annoying, but he could attest that he wasn't a bad guy. Perhaps he didn't trust him blindly, but there was a certain degree of trust. His blacksmith's judgment told him so, and the fact that despite possessing such monstrous strength, he didn't abuse his power spoke well of him. By the way, then Welf stopped what he was doing and looked at Belle. His downward curving eyebrows expressed curiosity as he picked up a piece of paper. Who gave you this idea? I'm not saying it's bad, but it's quite peculiar. I never would have imagined something like this. He pointed to the small-scale drawing on the paper. The lines weren't particularly impressive because Belle was terrible at drawing, but the basic concept was clear enough for a craftsman of Welf's caliber. The design resembled a hand grip. There were 5 finger holes as well as a small palm rest for support. I got it from one of the stories my grandfather told. You see, I like my current sword, but it's boring not being able to use it against villains. While there are some I can cut in half, the vast majority haven't sinned enough to deserve it. So that's why you want something that won't kill them in one hit. Man, that's cruel. Why not give them a quick death? Not necessarily. I mean, I can blow someone's head off with my bare fist, you know. But I feel like if you add the stored damage effect to the weapon, my strength would increase exponentially. Is that so? Absolutely. Just imagine being able to deliver a blow with the force of 10 of my maximum punches. It will definitely be a force to be reckoned with when I face the Black Dragon. With a nod to Belle's absurd statement, Welf returned to his work. He considered it utterly insane, yet relatively plausible after witnessing his strange friend's strength. If that absurd possibility could become a reality, he was prepared to give his best effort in making a weapon capable of increasing the chances of victory. Dude, I don't know what's going through your head, but what I do know is that you're a good person. That's why I'm offering you my help. His words momentarily puzzled Bell. A thoughtful expression came over his face as he watched Welf swinging his hammer. While peeling an orange, he asked, What's that about? I just wanted to say it. Come on, let me work in peace and try to win over your girl. Good luck, I see. Well, I'll be off then as I'm going out with Armidson today. I'll see you in a week, my good friend Welfie. Get out of here before I throw hot coals at you. When Welf picked up the burning coal with a hand shovel, Bell fled in terror from the forge. Not even in his wildest dreams would he be harmed by something like that, but he found the way Welf said and did things amusing. It seems he's not afraid of me, that's comforting. She took a breath and went out into the city streets. The cool breeze caressed her cheeks as her head filled with thoughts of Armid. A few days ago, while carrying out his daily routine of providing materials for his beloved, he had managed the feat of getting them to go out together. Should I try to hold his hand? Maybe he'll slap me. A thrill coursed through his bones. He could almost feel his lips twisting into a stupid, goofy grin. This had been the norm since their second encounter, as well as their new and improved beginning. The scene where he proposed to her covered in blood was buried in the sands of oblivion. Suddenly pulled from his reverie, he glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes focused on the corner of a structure in the distance. I felt a gaze. Was it my imagination? He raised his eyebrows in bewilderment, thinking it was impossible for anyone to evade his heightened senses. He was certainly lost in thought, but even if he was asleep, he was still able to react to surprise attacks. Yes, I figured as much. Having said that, she smiled again as she continued on her way. Of course, she made sure to buy a bouquet of white flowers along the way. Armidson, I've arrived. The doors burst open to the sound of ringing bells. It was the clinic that Armid personally ran, and it was about to close. Belson, there's no need to shout, I can hear you. With calm eyes and a gentle smile, she greeted Bell. The unusual sight of her curved lips only appeared in the presence of the strange demeanor emanating from this unusual boy. Hey, I'm so glad to see you. So where should we go on our first date? I can take you to the best ice cream shop in town. If Armid had to describe Bell as concisely as possible, that would be unnecessarily honest. He didn't just say embarrassing and nonsensical things randomly. If the opportunity arose, he would start explaining the reasons behind his words. On the other hand, he couldn't consider him a friend, but it was true that he didn't treat him like a stranger either. The word partners was the closest to perfectly describing the relationship between the two. First of all, it's not a date. Armid sighed at this and continued, I'm checking on some patients, and after you begged me on your knees to let you come with me, I agreed. Second, I don't like ice cream. The cold reply froze Bell's cheerful expression. He could almost feel cracks forming on his frozen body, which threatened to shatter at any moment. So indifferent. A sharp pain attacked his heart, however, it was not pain, but I love that it's difficult. He coughed a little after clearing his thoughts, and with a somewhat gloomy and worn expression, he murmured weakly, I think I have a headache. Is it a fever? What should I do? With this winter cold, maybe I should stay in bed for a week. The acting itself was terrible, but that was the intention. Armid could only stare blankly, her fists slightly clenched. Are you implying that you won't be able to collect the items for a week? To think you'd blackmail me like this? In fact, Armid was certain that Bell wouldn't go so far as to mix his personal feelings for her with their business dealings. However, she also couldn't allow herself to treat her greatest benefactor so cruelly. Belson. With a slight smile, she walked towards Bell after picking up a basket of potions and spoke. Come on, our appointment is waiting. Why, yes. I'm sorry, my migraine is starting to impair my hearing. Just as Bell was about to collapse, Armid snorted dismissively as she walked towards the pharmacy exit. There was no noticeable need in her to please Bell. Well, then I'll go alone. Let's go to our appointment. Only then, as he stood up and walked right past Armid with a goofy grin, did Bell reveal just how petty he could be in front of the woman he was interested in. They walked together through the streets. The strange combination of a young woman hailed as a saint whose appearance rivaled that of goddesses didn't mesh well with someone like Bell, and passers-by couldn't help but stare in disbelief. What are you looking at? Get lost. Bell glared at them with irritation, and curious glances wandered everywhere but him. The aura emanating from his body sent shivers down the spines of everyone nearby. Armid observed that with calm eyes. Belson, yes, my beloved Armidson, why are you so rude and aggressive towards people? Everyone will hate you. Surprise momentarily adorned Bell's expression. The fact that Armid didn't deny being his lover and instead prioritized the matter was something he hadn't expected. Glancing at her out of the corner of his eye, he answered honestly. He understood from Armid's expression and the look in her eyes that he was asking a question whose answer had to be honest. I've never been a fan of people who try so hard to please everyone. Of course, I wouldn't hurt innocent people, but it's not like I want to be friends either. I'm as transparent as I can be. Is that a bad thing, Armidson? Armid almost let out a sad sigh. She found Belle's simple personality incredible. It isn't, he murmured, still looking straight ahead. But being liked by people isn't a bad thing either. You should take that as a simple piece of advice from me. Well, if it's your advice, I can take it as gospel. You talk a lot of nonsense. People around them didn't dare look at her a second time, even when Armid walked through the open streets. She usually secluded herself in her drug development clinic, so her beauty was rarely seen. It was even more unruly when walking next to Belle, whose popularity was at its peak in Arario, whether good or bad. But I suppose his words aren't so far off the mark. As he walked beside her, Belle thought deeply about what Armid had said. His chest tightened, knowing that those words were a trace of concern for him. It's not so much that I dislike others, I'm just aware of my twisted way of thinking, as well as how difficult it is to find people who don't judge me. So far, only my family and wealthy have shown me fair treatment. A soft smile played on his lips. He almost felt it was really just his own fear of rejection. What is she thinking? It's hard to say from her expression. Knowing for sure was almost impossible. It wasn't because of Armid's utter indifference towards people, much less because of his reserved personality. Although they were still getting to know each other, Belle was already considered a trustworthy and approachable person. It was simply due to the fact that Armid, for as long as she could remember, had been so reclusive. Even if she wanted to, it would be very difficult for her to express her true feelings. We're almost there. Oh, are these the streets of Daedalus? I've been here before because Haruheim told me about it. There are a lot of thugs who need to be dealt with properly. I'm going to ask you to stop hitting people, please. If you do, report them to the Ganesha family. The place was exactly the same as it had been since Belle's last nightly visit to beat up criminals. Neglected and dirty streets lined with crumbling walls. Children running about war-worn clothes, their small faces and bodies covered in dust. Do you usually come here to offer support, Armidson? When I have free time, yes. That meant he did it for free. Asking something like, are there many patients, was as foolish as Belle's question about women. The poor condition of the place indicated high rates of disease as well as poor hygiene. It's admirable, Belle praised with a smile, glancing sideways at the woman beside him. I know I'm not a bad guy, but I confess I would hardly have come here for any other purpose than to kick criminals' asses. That's just a very different meaning of help, so there's nothing admirable about my actions. Is that so? It is. I help sick people with my knowledge, and you, Belson, help keep the usually vulnerable sick people safe, although I'd still prefer you stop hitting people. Belle chuckled slightly at that last bit before nodding with a "I'll think about it." She couldn't deny the fact that her heart was pounding with excitement the whole time. Things like casually chatting and sharing jokes, as well as discussing serious topics with the woman you love. Belle just felt it was a much better experience than the adrenaline rush he felt in life-or-death situations. Initially, I left home to find worthy rivals, and while that was on my mind, finding the ideal girl was secondary, something that would become important after killing the Black Dragon. I never imagined that everything would turn out differently than planned. A radiant smile adorned her lips. He was a young man whose tact was extremely deficient due to the lack of social interaction in his childhood, as well as an overly extreme battle-crazy maniac. However, now, as the sun bathed his noble figure, he smiled like a young man in love and grateful for the small surprises that life gave. What? At that moment, he reflexively turned towards his blind spot. How strange, did I imagine it again? What's wrong, Rabbit? This walk has already taken up 50% of the chapter, cut it out. Trainees, shut up. Belle squinted as he stared into the distance, up the top of a three-story house. He could have sworn he felt someone watching him from up there. Did I really imagine it? He thought about going to check, however. Armidson's gentle hand tugged at the hem of his suit. Belson, we've arrived. His beloved's enchanting voice drew his attention, setting aside his suspicions and looking ahead. Ah, it's the ice cream Oniachin. The one who helped us escape from prison. There, in front of the entrance to a dilapidated church, were three children playing together, a small beastman with golden hair, a human with brown hair, and an androgynous elf. The three showed their clear surprise at the unexpected visit of their savior, and their illuminated faces contrasted with their worn clothing. Belle, for his part, screamed, "Are the three of them serial killers? What did you call them?" Armid could only stare at him blankly. XXX. It wasn't like I surrendered to my feelings from the beginning. I tried to fight them. I tried not to look at him or search for him. I tried to ignore his presence. I tried to deceive my heart with lies. I tried not to think about him. I tried my best, but the battle was lost from the first time I saw it. He's smiling. From high on a rooftop, I watched with sorrow as Belle walked beside a woman. I was extremely careful, but I was almost caught twice. We've been noticeably distant since that argument, and yet I couldn't resist the urge to secretly follow him after seeing him come home late at night so many times in a row. My curiosity led me to what my eyes now saw. Who is she? And why does she have the same characteristics as me? I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred and became crystalline, my hands trembled uncontrollably, and my blood ran cold. My chest ached as a feeling similar to the sky falling on me filled me with anxiety and despair. This. I looked at my trembling hands. Drops of water fell on them without stopping like an autumn rain. Why am I crying? I always found it chilling and terrifying, but I inevitably came to imagine scenarios where I was rejected by Belle, or others where I found love with another woman. On all those occasions, I always told myself that I would end up going crazy one way or another. I would either destroy the city or make the usurper disappear. Those were always my conclusions. However, now that I was facing reality, it was quite harsh. I never imagined myself crying at the sight of Belle smiling happily. It hurt me not to be the woman walking beside him and causing that beautiful smile on his lips. But at the same time, I was happy to see him smile happily. No. I bit my lips, trying to suppress the trembling that had taken over my body. No. A chilling fear consumed my heart. This is not what I want. But I couldn't help feeling joy and sadness at the same time. My maternal side blossomed as the love between a woman and a man shattered inside me. Was it this? Is it because I wasn't direct enough? It's not that I didn't try. I always tried to clarify my feelings, but I always ended up failing. I searched for the way and the words, but every opportunity I had, I ended up wasting. I always wished I didn't feel that fear and could be a little brave, just enough to let him know how I feel. Can I still? I denied such a thought. Now that things were like this, with him smiling next to a woman he clearly loved, I no longer had the right to interfere. I wanted to do it. I wanted to be able to explode with anger and snatch him away from myself. But all I could do was shed tears like a little girl whose heart was shattered. It was difficult for me to avoid this feeling of sadness and happiness when my heart beats wildly and painfully for him. I don't want to. My eyes saw clearly, but my soul refused to accept reality. I wanted to love him more than anyone else, love him to the bone without fear of losing him. I wanted to love him more than anyone else, to make everyone forget the bad guys in their story. I wanted to love him more than anyone else, to be able to make it so that only I am in their eyes. I wanted to love him more than anyone else, make him fly among the clouds and fulfill all his wishes. I wanted to love him more than anyone else, to indulge her whims and surrender to her whims. I wanted to love him more than anyone else. Belle, if only he could love me. Belle, I would love him more than anyone. I love you, Belle. But he saw me as family, and I had no other option but to keep my feelings to myself. I really love you if it were up to him. But because I love you, I will support you. She had to endure amidst tears and a smile, the joy and sorrow of this happy unhappiness. Chapter 20, they were just unlucky. I fell in love with life knowing that it would end. I fell in love with the night knowing that dawn would break. I fell in love with the cold knowing that I wouldn't always feel it. I fell in love with him knowing he would never be mine. Alfia, XXX. Luck, whether good or bad, is not something divine. Often, if not always, it's due to small coincidences. For example, finding a coin on the road isn't simply a stroke of luck. It's a small coincidence that someone accidentally dropped it. And even that which they call bad luck was just the coincidental clumsiness of that someone. Hey, how's it going? Normal will reach the target by the end of the month, so there's no need to worry. Kyujuju, is that right? I can't wait to see the chaos on the surface when everyone starts attacking each other. Just imagining their expressions when they see the person they trust most stab them in the back makes me scream with excitement. Dude, you're crazy. Far below Aurario in the labyrinth known as Knossos, a pair of men dressed in black robes engaged in a gravely deadly conversation. It was a terrorist attack planned for early next month. They had developed a hallucinogenic drug, and their intention was to release it in one of the city's busiest districts, the newly renovated and rebuilt Pleasure District. The goal was to affect everyone in the area and make them kill each other, turning the place into a bloody and desperate massacre. Don't blame me, the mad scientist complained. Those surface bastards infuriate me. I hate seeing them smile, and for that very reason I long to see them despair endlessly. Kuku Mufyu. Old. The other scientist, his closest colleague, looked at him with a hint of irony in his eyes. He was usually a good guy, so he couldn't judge his friend for wanting to see the chaos. Furthermore, if we disregard the murders, rapes, and kidnappings, both were people of high social and moral standing, exemplary citizens, so to speak. The twisted friendship they shared was special and unbreakable. What? That's why the #1 mad scientist didn't know what to think about the dagger stuck in his back. Moreover, he really didn't know what to think about the hand that was holding the dagger. A friend. The face of the #1 mad scientist reflected confusion mixed with a bitter feeling of betrayal. His chest throbbed painfully while his head filled with confused and contradictory thoughts. Well, in a way, she had fulfilled her wish if only she could see her face reflected in the mirror. So close, yet so far. And no, old man, this isn't what it looks like. Something's affecting my brain. Please don't die. Who else but you will help me kidnap young women, old man? A friend. Mad Scientist number 1 reached out and grabbed a scalpel on the workbench and then plunged it into Mad Scientist number 2's chest. I understand, I'm going through the same thing. What the hell is this? Now, for those who didn't see what they saw, it was basically a hallucination. Mad Scientist number 1 viewed Mad Scientist number 2 as a monster from the middle floors, and Mad Scientist number 2 viewed Mad Scientist number 1 as a monster from the deep floors. However, they still retained some of their consciousness, so it was possible to experience the feeling of betrayal before dying. Like true friends, they stabbed each other repeatedly until they ended their lives. Now, it wasn't the bad luck of his invention showing an unexpected type of leak. It was truly a simple coincidence, XXX. In a room adjacent to that of the two mad scientists, about 100 people were watching a live demonstration. Everyone except one was sitting watching the other give a demonstration of his rudimentary game. Basically, he was manipulating a young woman through extremely hard and thin wires to make her do embarrassing things, from lasciviously opening her legs to performing oral hex on the presenter himself. With this, once all the gods ascend, we will be able to subjugate all the women on the surface and turn them into our hex slaves. He was a good example of a proud American patriot. He looked so happy and pleased with himself when the entire audience cheered and applauded, completely fascinated. However, the presenter looked confused when he involuntarily began walking towards the table on the stage, placed the member previously attended to by the young woman, took a dagger and cut it off. All sound vanished instantly. The applause stopped and the cheers fell silent. A second later, the presenter became aware of what had happened. Blood gushed out like a maddened fountain in front of the weeping young woman who had previously been controlled. He had a confused expression as he watched the entire audience stand up and form a line to go up on stage and do the same thing as the presenter. What's going on, damn it? Hey, you idiot, what did you do to us? Stop. Complaints and pleas were directed towards the presenter, but he was no longer in this world. He had bled to death due to the panic of losing his hennies and not putting pressure on it. It also didn't help that he repeatedly stabbed himself. Thus, each and every one of them lost their limb and died after repeated self-stabbing, leaving only the poor young woman on the stage covered in blood and corpses. It was not at all a kind of bad luck that caused the device to malfunction and control everyone. It was truly a simple coincidence. XXX. In the corridors of Gnosis. Hey, who on earth thought it was a good idea to decorate the hallways? I hate plants. I know, but we're at rock bottom, so complaining won't solve anything. Get to work and we'll be done sooner. Damn it, two janitors prepared to get rid of all the plants located in all the corridors of the maze. It was like flowering vines sprouting from the walls and floor, as if all of Gnosis were turning into a jungle. Right now I'd be spying on the women's restroom MHM, what the heck? At that moment, the number 1 janitor seemed confused by the unexpected movement of a vine. Before he could tell his fellow janitor, this same vine straightened up and attacked like a spear wielded by a seasoned warrior, piercing his heart. Kug. The force lifted him into the air, but that was only the beginning. From all directions, more vines straightened up to impale janitor number 1. What the hell is going on? Qeg, the second janitor, also became a victim of the deadly flower-covered vines. But it wasn't just bad luck that a plant-like monster snuck in and planted its seeds all over the maze. It was truly a simple coincidence. XXX. By the end of the day, all of Gnosis ended up looking like a rather dangerous tropical jungle. From self-aware vines that attacked any moving living being to hallucinogenic spores and plant threads that got into the skin and manipulated people's nerves and muscles. Well, I'm done here. What will you do with the captive people? The place is an obvious disaster, so by tomorrow at the latest, all the families who can will send out exploration teams. They'll take care of it. I see, that makes sense. Yes, let's go back. I need to prepare myself to see my lovely Armidson's expression when this is made public. You're truly beyond help, you damned madman. Luck didn't exist, only coincidences did. It was a coincidence that Armid commented with a saddened face about Evelus's atrocious acts to a madly in love Belle. In conclusion, they were just unlucky. XXX. 1 week before the invasion of Gnosis and the fall of all Evelus, inside the orphanage run by Mother Maria. Is that how you met them, escaping from prison with them? Yeah. After apologizing for calling them serial killers as well as explaining why he thought they were serial killers, Belle recounted the wonderful story of his escape with the 3 orphans. It was funny at the time, she excused herself. For starters, why were there 3 children there if they weren't serial killers? Mother Marison, you are very heartless. Like a master of twisted machinations, Belle wore a pained expression as he turned his attention to Maria. He needed to get rid of the sharp gaze Armid was giving him. Maria simply stared at him blankly. She couldn't understand the attitude of the young man who had come with Armid. She, on the other hand, looked questioningly at Belle before turning back to Maria. Belle's plan worked perfectly. That's true, Mariasin. I understand it's dangerous to go out at night these days, but sending them to prison is a bit. The two women chatted for a while, sharing opinions on the subject, while Belle addressed her fellow fugitives. You brats, how have you been? Great. Mama Maria was only a little annoyed before greeting us with a hug. As always, Fia was the one who initiated conversations. She seemed to be the leader of the group or the representative for conversations involving. Rai and Rue nodded in unison. I see, Belle said with a smile. It's important to hug those who love you. You see, Armidson still refuses to accept that fact. She hasn't given me a single hug. Sister Armid is like that, although she has hugged us. What's wrong, Belle Oniachin? Your eyes are scary. No, nothing. I was just thinking that crime is pretty common around here. It wouldn't be surprising if something happened to them tomorrow. The three children, formerly serial killers, broke out in a cold sweat as they backed away and huddled together. The bloodlust in Belle's eyes was enough to make them see a future where the three of them mysteriously disappeared. The vision was going to continue, however. Someone hit Belle from behind. Ouch. Wait, why does it hurt so much? Is this the power of love? Stop bothering the children, Belson. Armid appeared with a gentle smile. Apparently she had already finished talking to Maria, and after seeing Belle's intimidation of the three orphans with beads of sweat running down his forehead, she took her saint's staff and dropped it on the back of Belle's neck. He did not have the strength to harm him, but for some reason, all of Belle's defenses ceased when they identified the source of the hostility. Stop bothering them, I need to check on everyone's health. Are they sick? They look perfectly fine. Belle gently rubbed the back of his neck as he stepped back and sat down. He was fascinated to see Armid attending to each child individually with a kind smile on her lips. He could easily die without regrets now that his eyes had captured such a scene. It's nothing serious, at least not with them. At least, yeah. Then, with a sad expression on her face, Armid explained more about the situation on Daedalus Street. It wasn't just about poverty or terrible hygiene or even about the dirt in the streets. Apart from the children showing symptoms of malnutrition and minor stomach infections due to the poor quality of food, the most worrying thing was the elderly. Unlike younger people, they did not have a perfect immune system. The mildest cases were acute illnesses, and the most severe cases even led to chronic diseases. No matter how hard I try to help them, I can only prolong their suffering. Potions and medicines only soothe illnesses, they don't eliminate them. In the end, it's as if I'm not doing anything. My actions have no effect whatsoever on these people's daily lives. What Belle understood from the sincerity with which Armid recounted her sorrows was that she really was a good person. My aunt will be delighted to accept someone like that. However, that thought was not the priority. With good reason, his anger towards the extortion at the hands of the Loki family, who demanded absurd prices for items that only they could provide, grew. Aurario does not deserve to be called the city of heroes. And it wasn't just the Loki family. There was the guild, whose source of income was thanks to the absurd taxes they levied on anything they could think of, as well as great families who acted for personal gain. The strong oppressing the weak, the rich absorbing the poor. It was a city rotten to the core, one where good people shone dimly like fireflies wandering through the vast darkness of the night. And as if that weren't enough, Armid's voice pulled Belle from his thoughts. It was imbued with a sad and furious tone which surprised him. He never thought he'd ever see this beautiful woman frown in anger. It wasn't the kind of anger she showed when Belle made one of his silly attempts to hold her hand or fake a fall so she would catch him. That anger was quite funny and endearing, like the furious barking of a small puppy. Those heartless people who, even knowing how hard life is for these people, trample on it with perverse smiles on their faces. Now this anger, ingrained in his words and reflected in his eyes, was not like that of a small puppy. She was trembling, and one might think that tears would spring from her eyes at any moment. Really, Armidson, just as she was about to let out a frustrated cry, Belle took her hand to calm her. Gently and delicately he held it in a warm touch. Calm down, breathe, I wouldn't want to see you have a panic attack. Feeling the softness of Belle's hands, Armid exhaled a stifled sigh. She looked into his eyes, drawing on the peace reflected in the rubbered sea to calm herself. After a few minutes, she regained consciousness. Her cheeks burned with a light blush as she realized how she had acted in front of Belle, and she quickly pulled her hands back to her chest. The warmth shared by Belle's hands was still present. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. Yes, you did deal with a lot of people after all. It was already night, which made it clear that time had passed since morning. Now they were both in a room at the orphanage where Armid was resting after overusing her healing magic. The basket full of potions and medicine was empty. The children were asleep and the place was quiet. It was only because of that sinuous silence and mental exhaustion that Armid showed herself vulnerable to Belle for a moment. Come on, I'll walk you home. Thank you, Belson. Belle ignored the small tear that rolled down Armid's left cheek. He didn't want to embarrass her by pointing it out, that's why he kept it to himself. They both said goodbye to Maria and left the orphanage, walked through the silent streets under the pale moonlight and talked to each other. Belle was being especially attentive in case Armid collapsed from exhaustion, ready to catch her in his arms. Armidson, I'll be very busy with an order from my blacksmith in the dungeon. You probably won't hear from me for at least a week, is that right? I suppose the daily collections will be cancelled until then, won't they? Yeah. When they arrived at Armid's house, Belle was understanding and simply said goodbye as any normal person would. She said goodnight and see you soon, accompanied by a smile. Armid, for her part, genuinely appreciated the gesture. I'll see you later, Belson. Yeah, by the way. At the entrance, protected by a well-decorated metal fence and a very sturdy gate, Armid showed an adorable side as she slowly closed the door. Her face showed a slight blush as the opening gradually became smaller. Thank you. Then when only her lips and one of her beautiful eyes were visible, she let out a soft thank you for accompanying me today. The door closed, leaving Belle in complete silence. The cicadas filled the cold night air with their chirping song. She's too cute, isn't she? Meh, it's not bad. It felt truly wonderful to receive such a lovely thank you, but Belle wasn't in a position to enjoy it for very long. I had things to do. Well, I must make those who made my beloved cry pay. Later, he discovered the existence of an extremist group called Evolus, the origin of that tier in Armid. And so, thanks to a very unfortunate coincidence, the ruin of all Evolus was sealed. XXX. News one day after the fall of Evolus. As Belle stated, all the families with the ability to send personnel collaborated and made a reconnaissance of the unexpected and very striking entrance to Knossos. In fact, calling it striking was an understatement. Not even a blind person could ignore the appearance of the gigantic tree that had sprouted overnight in the city's main square. It measured around 20 meters, and the ostentatious door in the middle of the stem led to one of the corridors of Knossos. Proceed with caution. We don't know what lies ahead, so stay alert at all times. Don't go off on your own, stay with your group. Finn Damney led the excursion along with members of his family. Each executive was in charge of a group of 5 to 6 people who thoroughly explored the area. Their excellent coordination allowed them to contemplate a grim and twisted work of art. Are these people? They're dead, aren't they? Didn't that just move? What the hell is going on with all these plants? These vines seem to have sucked all the fluids out of the bodies. A nightmarish scenario. The women tensed, stifling a gasp of surprise and holding their breath. They were unable to see the corpses hanging from trees and buried beneath thorny vines. And then there were those horrific displays of men and women stabbing each other in the back, just like statues in a tragicomedy. At every corner, at every intersection turn, and even in every room, everything was decorated with grotesque scenes covered in corpses with expressions of terror carved into their faces. Besides the kidnapped people, there was no one alive. Finn watched everything in silence. Sweat ran down his forehead and a lump formed in his throat. What his eyes saw was a work only possible by a single author. However, he was unable to mention it openly. The entire Loki familia, along with others like the Ganesha familia, had been meticulously planning their siege of Knossos. It was an extremely important plan to which they had all dedicated their efforts, from monetary capital, troop mobilization, information gathering, and mapping of safe and unsafe routes. A lifelong job, so to speak. Finn. Reveria's voice came from behind him, but Finn didn't turn around. He simply stared intently at the stage before him, an overwhelming power impossible to overcome. The kidnapped people have been brought to safety. There are no traces of any monster, only its magic stones. The place is clean. Had they arrived earlier, they wouldn't even believe the existence of so many demispirits as well as the dragon listed as LV-8 was possible. Not to mention the fact that they were victims of the very author of the work right in front of them. Take them to the surface. Everyone above level 4 will stay behind to finish the exploration and research any technology found. Call in all healers if you find any survivors. Understood. Reveria nodded. Like Finn, only one person came to mind as responsible for all of this. The biggest clue was that he was, in fact, a contractor for the legendary forest spirit. I couldn't wait to finish exploring Knossos so I could go and talk in detail about the incident with the culprit Belle. XXX. The entire exploration took 3 days. While the artificial dungeon was quite extensive, the real reason it took so long was the enormous amount of vegetation everywhere. The hardness of the trees, vines, and other vegetation significantly slowed progress as well as the clearing. The place was no different from any forest one might find outside of Arario, and in the end no one was found alive. Belson. Yes, Armidson, it was me. The birdsong drifted along with the cool afternoon breeze, rustling the leaves of the trees that adorned the square where they were having their second date. Although it wasn't actually a date, they were sitting on a bench under the canopy of a tree in front of the fountain positioned in the center. The upward jets of water released small crystalline droplets that were pulled by the light air currents, refreshing the place and making the children playing around squeal with joy. In that beautiful setting, Armid looked into Belle's eyes. The beautiful silver gray and jade green colors of his eyes conveyed a complex feeling, a mixture of seriousness and anguish. It was you, wasn't it? Belle watched as Armid clenched her hands into fists. He couldn't properly categorize how she felt based on just her expression. But even so, despite noticing the seriousness with which he asked, he only tilted his head with a confused expression adorned with a smile. Huh, what are you talking about? Peace, don't try to lie to me. Armid landed a blow to his chest. It wasn't nearly strong enough to harm him, but it delivered a strangely agonizing kind of pain to Belle's body. She could no longer simply call it the power of love. Her defenses always halted any action when it came to her. I know it was you. Belle didn't dare ask. If you know, then why are you asking? Because he understood perfectly well that this was no time for jokes. She sighed and looked up at the sky. As always, it boasted a beautiful blue painted with white nuances. Well, yes, it was me. You caught me, Armidson. Why did you do something like that? Armid's gaze turned complicated. The somber expression on her pretty face made Belle grimace. He didn't like seeing her sad, but it was even more annoying to see her get upset over worthless garbage, just like everything in Evelis. I'm not defending them, nor am I trying to pity them, but... Armid's hands trembled slightly. Slowly and somewhat uncertainly, she moved them and took Belle's hands. Was it really necessary to punish them in that way? As the best healer in the city, Armid was obviously called upon to be part of the excursion to Knossos. The way they died. He witnessed firsthand the desperate and tearful expressions of each corpse down there, as well as the manner in which they died. Those who castrated themselves, those impaled by vines, those stabbed in the back, those whose bodies were desiccated by plants that fed on their blood. It was a horrifying scene that caused most of the healers who were in the exploration and rescue group to faint. Did they really have to die like that? Belle looked at her coldly. Beyond Armid's initial shock at being looked at like that for the first time, she wasn't even able to react properly. Her entire body was frozen, unable to move under the terrifying pressure emanating from Belle's body. The surroundings were the same. The children, the birds, even the wind itself. Everything seemed to stop at Belle's will. It's quite annoying, Belle muttered, his eyes blazing with anger. It bothers me so much to see you mourning the deaths of those pieces of trash. Armid swallowed, unable to utter a word. She didn't take it for granted, but knowing Belle's feelings for her, she believed she would never receive that kind of treatment. However, it was entirely different for Belle. He was in love, but he still had a strong will and a great sense of duty towards his ideals. One of them was to show no mercy to those who oppressed and harmed innocent people. I would never forgive those who enjoyed hurting people. If you're looking for an apology from me, you're wasting your time. I only did what had to be done, and I don't think I overstepped my bounds. In fact, I think I was too lenient. Had I had the time, I would have made them suffer for 100 days. Now I remembered. He remembered perfectly the cold gaze that now met his eyes. The same gaze had been present during the unilateral massacre of the Apollo family. Slowly, Armid lowered her gaze to her lap. She no longer held Belle's hands and now rested her own, as trembling as they were, on her legs. Silently, he could do nothing but think about everything that had happened. It took him a while, but he correctly deduced what had driven Belle to go against Evelis. What I said at the orphanage 11 days ago. Of course, it was bound to happen sooner or later when Belle learned about Evelis's existence, but Armid had indirectly caused their downfall. I'm sorry, time passed again. The birds sang, the children shouted with joy, the wind shook the leaves of the trees, decorating the place. I was pretty cheeky, wasn't I? I don't know how to feel about it. It's all very confusing and complicated. Part of me writhes in agony at the way they died, while the other part leaps for joy knowing that Aurario will be so much safer. That people will no longer be afraid to go out at night. The words flowed as easily as the sun rises in the morning. Even she was surprised by her unexpected chatter. I'm very grateful, but I can't stop thinking about how I did it wrong. Apparently, I hate the fact that I made you do something so awful. I like your playful and relaxed side that shows a flirtatious attitude whenever it has the chance. But I dislike the idea of imagining you doing something so awful to other people. The atmosphere lightened, and although she no longer felt any pressure, Armid's heart was still beating very fast. A sharp pain mixed with a pleasant feeling that she didn't recognize, and that confused her. I'm sorry, I said some nonsensical things. When Armid looked up, she met a pair of smiling eyes. Belle gave her a gentle smile, making her racing heart pound even faster. So you like me when I'm playful and flirtatious, Armidson? I confess that your bold and daring attitude has taken me by surprise. Soon that gentle smile turned into a teasing one filled with a strange feeling of affection. Armid blushed furiously, realizing the subtle misunderstanding in her words. She quickly moved away from Belle, gliding to the opposite end of the bench. I didn't mean that. Stop twisting words to suit your fancy. Fool, haha, you look so cute. Despite her attempts to hide the redness in her face, it was all in vain. It didn't help that Belle slid across the bench to approach her with a flirtatious smile. You really are too pretty. W, what are you doing? Get away. Why don't you try it? The proximity increased greatly. Belle brought his face closer to Armid's, which was beet red. Seeing her act so differently than usual filled him with a joy greater than any pleasure in the world. Armidson, why yes. The background was filled with a pink color and floating flowers, figuratively speaking. The birdsong and the joyful shouts of children, as well as the faint sound of the wind swaying the treetops, all lost its sound. Armid's eyes and ears only looked and listened to Belle. In detail, her thoughts admitted that he was quite handsome. His eyes, red as the most precious rubies, were unusually enchanting when they gave off that flirtatious air he always displayed to her. Her lips, full enough to be seductive, boasted a white pink capable of captivating any woman in the city. Wait, Belson. No, I can't wait any longer, Armidson. Belle's warm breath hit his face, sending an electric shock through his entire brain. It wasn't just the scent of her hair and skin, but her breath. Everything about Belle exuded a soft, relaxing, and dreamy aroma, a kind of natural aphrodisiac that was extremely deadly for women. Belson. He closed his eyes, unable to think or do anything. The way things were going, Belle was definitely going to steal her lips. It was something Armid never expected from him, but now there was nothing she could do to stop it. Was it because, unexpectedly, she felt attracted to the handsome young man who did everything to make her happy? She never thought she would experience such a feeling. She calmed her breathing, waiting for whatever had to happen while her eyelids trembled gently, making her long eyelashes dance. Oh, it's Belle Oniachin. He's attacking Sister Armid. Patan, Fia, Ryan, Ru. Their childish voices broke the beautiful atmosphere, bringing Armid back to reality. With his face burning hot, he let out, I told you to stay away. I'm still upset about what you did. He opened his eyes and pushed both hands onto Belle's chest. He knew perfectly well that he would never, not even in his wildest dreams, be able to push Belle. However, his slight push sent him rolling on the ground. Belle fell backwards, staring at the sky with an irritated expression. He had been so close to taking a big step in his relationship with Armid. Damn children. He could still hear them beside him, then they crept into his field of vision as they looked at him with looks of compassion and pity. They rejected him. Cheer up, old man, poor. Belle wanted to yell at them that it was their fault, but he couldn't vent his frustration while Armid was there. He would undoubtedly get a lecture. Children, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be praying at the orphanage with Saint Mary? Still red-faced, Armid timidly approached the trio of orphans while trying to ignore Belle's reproachful stare. I was clearly conveying to them that they should return to what they were doing just moments before. I let my guard down for a second. Ignoring him and berating herself, she knelt down to the children's level and gave them a gentle smile as she spoke to them. The burning red of her face was beginning to subside a little. We ask for permission to go out and play. Mother Mary is having tea with the grandmothers on the street. Play. What a blatant lie, Armid tried to refute, but the natural way they said it didn't sound like a lie. Moreover, the smiles etched on their faces were even more radiant than usual. It was 1 in the afternoon, and it wasn't normal to see them so cheerful at the time they were supposed to be praying with Mary. Wait, that's when he noticed it. He felt like he couldn't breathe as he cupped Fia's cheeks in his hands and performed a quick examination with his magic. But how? Speechless, he checked out Rai and Ru equally. Are there no traces of malnutrition anymore? Stunned, she examined them again meticulously, and the result was identical to before. The amused smiles of the 3 orphans now made sense to her, as did Maria's peculiar permission. They were healthy. It wasn't unusual for most of the people on Daedalus Street, especially the children, to suffer from malnutrition due to poor diet. This was one of the reasons I went there every weekend and provided treatment to the children at the orphanage. However, the 3 orphans were perfectly healthy in front of her. If it weren't for the absurdity of the situation, Armid would have burst into tears as she hugged them. After all, malnutrition was not a condition that could be improved in just 3 days, which was the time he was away exploring Knossos. The color of her complexion, the weight loss, the bulging abdomen, the prominent cheekbones, the dryness of her skin, and the coldness in her hands and feet. Everything had vanished as if it had never existed, and that wasn't all. Armid could not properly process the structure of the bodies that the 3 children now had. What happened while I was gone? It was as if his entire organism, from muscle fibers, joints, and organs, was broken down and rebuilt from scratch. A structural reorganization of their bodies, anatomical and physiological. You don't know. Fia flashed a charming smile alongside a confused expression. His small arm extended, pointing his finger at Belle, who was still lying on his back gazing at the sky. Belle Oniachin has treated all the sick people in Daedalus. Slowly, Armid turned towards Belle. He wasn't looking at her anymore, he was just gazing at the sky while surreptitiously whistling. In fact, he almost seemed to be deliberately ignoring her. Was he embarrassed about being caught? Armid's blank mind was incapable of understanding it. No, she simply didn't want to understand it. Belson. He stood up, but contrary to expectations, he didn't walk toward Belle. Instead, he turned his attention to the path that led to Daedalus Street. Her heart began to pound anxiously. A lump formed in her throat, and the corners of her eyes began to burn with moisture. Unconsciously, he began to run. Sister Armid, where are you going? He didn't stop to answer Rai Oafia. He simply ran with all his might, without stopping, without looking back. Her heart raced, her blood rushing through her body. A burning shiver ran down her spine as a sharp, tingling sensation spread across her skin. He crossed corners and alleyways until he reached the entrance to Daedalus Street. His gaze wandered everywhere and his body moved everywhere. He entered the homes of the people he was treating once a week, and incredibly and absurdly they were healthy. A certain old woman, formerly blind, was telling a book of heroic tales to her grandchildren. A certain gentleman whose right arm was taken in the dungeon was now throwing a ball to a child who formerly could not walk and now ran with a smile in pursuit of said ball. A certain father, formerly with fractured backbones, was now running around carrying his daughter piggyback. A certain gentleman, formerly an invalid, now cheerfully helped clean the streets of the place. A certain group of elderly people, too old to shout, were playing cards scandalously. A mother, a father, a young woman, a boy, a girl. From chronic illnesses that caused them to spit or urinate blood to the lack of limbs. Each and every one of them, with a radiant smile, said, "A young man with white hair cured us. He had been working day and night for 3 days without rest to cure all the sick and disabled people on Daedalus Street. This wasn't about prototypes or the joining of donated limbs. This was about high-level cellular regeneration, one that was thought to be possible only for the gods." Tears streamed down Armid's cheeks. She had fallen to her knees, unable to properly process everything that was happening. Her heart was filled with a warm feeling, and as she watched everyone smiling and running around, her lips twisted into a cute smile. Silly. She sobbed silently, but not from sadness. The happiness and joy that filled her from within burst forth in crystal tears and a trembling smile. "You really are a fool." The smiling face, the flirtatious gaze, everything that characterized Belle floated in her thoughts at all times and did not cease to be so for a single second. Whether it's to make a good impression or to impress her, whether it's out of goodwill or for personal satisfaction. The fact that he had cured hundreds of people did not diminish his merit. And now he could understand the reason he had been able to push him like that and also why he didn't get up. He's exhausted. Everyone had said that Belle didn't take a single breath, that he healed them all with a tired smile and sweat running down his body, for 3 days, without sleeping or resting. How can he appear to be in good condition? I didn't notice. Strength returned to his body. He stood up and started running again. Only a couple of hours had passed since she'd been in the square. She had no proof or reason, but she wished she could find him in the same place, lying on his back and gazing at the sky with that unusual look in his beautiful eyes. Eager to see him, Armid ran with a beautiful smile on her lips. XXX. By the time Armid arrived, her breathing was erratic. Exhaustion hit her body, forcing her to kneel to catch her breath. However, it only took 2 shallow breaths before he looked up and frantically searched for Belle. She didn't have to look far. She widened her eyes, holding her breath and pressing both hands to her rapidly beating chest. He was still there, lying on his back, staring wearily at the sky. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths as if he were about to fall asleep. Armid was there to see him, but Belle was so exhausted that he didn't have the energy to deal with the children who occasionally passed by and poked him with a stick to see if he was still alive. Belson. He walked slowly, almost staggering from the numbness in his legs. Physical endurance wasn't his strong suit, so he had already reached his limit. Armidson. When she heard Belle's soft voice, Armid's eyes shone with a moist glow. The corners of her eyes began to sting. I didn't know what to say, although it would be more accurate to say that I didn't think I was able to say enough to thank him. That's why she slowly walked towards him. Body cast a shadow covering Belle's face. She couldn't believe he was still slumped in the same spot, but he seemed so much like himself. Only bellcranel was capable of acting like that. Did you do it for me? She leaned forward, taking a seat on the plaza tile in the traditional manner. Her silver-gray hair fell down either side of her face like a cascade of silver, tickling Belle's face. Well, I was going to do it sooner or later. I planned to cure the sick after making the strong stronger. But yes, let's just say you made me do it long before. Armid's hands slid over Belle's cheeks, then gently stroked his white hair. After a moment, she lifted his head and placed it on her lap. Belle's eyes widened in surprise, but he was unable to say anything. Thank you. He was captivated by the beautiful smile that Armid displayed. The sparkle in her eyes, the red tint on her cheeks, and the delicate curve of her lips. The way her eyes crinkled as she smiled, the crystal tears rolling down her cheeks. Thank you very much, Belle, and the angelic tone of her voice. Tears streamed down his face, but he showed no displeasure. On the contrary, he felt that each drop purified him as if they were the tears of a saint. I couldn't believe that such a beautiful person as Armid existed. A feeling of relief washed over him. Resting on her lap, he received thanks and a beautiful smile and was simply called by name. I couldn't let this golden opportunity pass me by, the perfect moment. Armidson, yes, Belle, marry me. He threw the dice in a leap of faith. They spun and spun, but Armid's beautiful expression did not disappear. Slowly, one of her hands made a mesmerizing movement as she tucked her hair behind her ear. She formed a smile and a flirtatious look illuminated by the daylight. It was an expression capable of seducing any man on earth, and Belle was no exception. Her heart pounded with excitement. She couldn't believe what she was seeing, and neither could she believe what was about to happen. Did I finally do it? His hard work paid off, he thought, but no, Armid, still with a smile and flirtatious look, brutally rejected him. The only thing that had changed compared to previous times was that enchanting beauty reflected in her eyes and lips. Honestly, Belle was already used to it, but he firmly believed that this time something would be different. His heart fell to pieces into the depths of the abyss. But, just as he was about to die, Armid's voice rang out. Belle looked at her, and that seductive expression was gone, an embarrassed look alongside an adorable blush adorning her cheeks, not to mention her entire face. She looked away, murmuring in a sweet tone of voice, "Could we start as friends? I don't know your family, so we could start there. Then maybe we could begin a relationship." Slowly, Belle's eyes widened, bigger than you could ever imagine. Facing him, who was receiving a lap pillow, was an adorably embarrassed and shy Armid. The wind ruffled her hair and it danced, caressing Belle's face. Little by little, Armid lowered her head, and now they could feel each other's breaths. The silence lasted for a while, and then when Armid felt she was about to die of embarrassment, Belle murmured, "Did I do it? Focus on giving me an answer, you idiot. Wait, it hurts, it hurts. Your power of love is too great for a mortal like me. Stop saying nonsense." People passing by could only smile ironically while murmuring things like, "It's good to be young." Chapter 21, obviously it's because. When I made a place for us here in my poems, you can come whenever you want and also leave when you need to. Alfia. 2. I wish you would come here angry, fed up with waiting for me, and once here, kick the door while shouting, "Coward, come out right now and face the love of your life." Belle XXX. 1 week after the beginning of the friendship between Belle and Armid, Zald returned to Arario. He walked calmly through the north gate of the city, completing a short registration and greeting the guards who bowed in admiration towards him. His vacation spot was pretty clear just by looking at his outfit, which consisted of loose shorts and a button-down beach shirt. "Welcome back, Zaldsama. Hey Haruheim, please stop treating me with so much respect. You're like a niece to me." Zald gave a brotherly smile to Haruheim, who had come to greet him wearing her usual priestess outfit. She was embarrassed when they called her niece, but she tried hard not to show it while smiling gently. "How has everyone been?" "Well, the days have been quiet since Master Belle's trial." "Oh, that's good. Did you have fun at the beach, Zaldsama?" "Well, fishing in the calm of the sea is very relaxing. I feel like I've gained back a few years of my life." They both walked through the streets of Arario, bustling with the shouts of children playing and their mothers scolding them. It was a beautiful day. The atmosphere in the house sponsored by Hermes was also calm. Zald watched silently as Zeus read an erotic book in the living room. Nothing out of the ordinary for him. What was unusual was Alfia. "Haruheim, did I miss something important?" "Well." The atmosphere was calm, and that in itself was rare. Beyond feeling offended by his family's curt welcome, what intrigued Zald was the terrifying silence. Alfia was in the dining room, staring out the window with a vacant expression. The blue and green landscape of sky and trees did little to capture her attention. If someone were to portray her exactly as she was and title it Lover of Silence, it could be considered the greatest work of art in history. Family. Before Haruheim could explain recent events, Belle walked through the door with a refreshing smile on his lips. Everyone's eyes except Alfia fell on him. She continued to stare at a distant place. "Belle. What's going on? Why the commotion?" "Oh, Uncle Zald, this is better. With you here, the family is complete." Belle walked over to give Zald a warm welcome hug, then had everyone take a seat at the table where Alfia was sitting. Zeus put down his book, Haruheim made tea, and Alfia continued staring somewhere very, very far away. She was thinking about the many mistakes she had made that had led to this terrible and heartbreaking outcome. "I have some news for you." In contrast to Alfia's melancholic image, Belle seemed euphoric as a radiant smile blinded everyone. Alfia glanced sideways at that beauty, contemplating it in silence. "Cancel all your plans tonight and put on your best clothes. Today I'm going to introduce you to my almost girlfriend. Of course, I've already booked the Lady of Abundance, so it'll be a place just for us." Silence settled for a long time. Alfia closed her eyes, fighting the urge to get up and go cry in her room. She gave a gentle smile, trying to hide her emotions. Zald, on the other hand, could not believe that everything remained intact after Belle made such a bold and deadly statement. He looked at Alfia, incredulous at the calm posture she displayed. "What the hell happened in my absence?" At this point, I thought Alfia and Belle would have made progress, which is why I took a vacation, because it would be awkward to watch the process. But contrary to what he expected, there was now the existence of an almost girlfriend, if such a thing existed. What was certain for Zald was that Belle was now in contact with a woman who was his love interest, and that it seemed to be reciprocating. "Ah, that's right," Belle slapped his palm, making a clarifying gesture. "Uncle Zald, I've finally found my soulmate. Remember the girl my Aunt Alfia described? I unexpectedly found her." No, that girl was supposed to be Alfia. Zald wanted to shout, asking if everyone was all right. Well, wanting aunt and nephew to be together isn't exactly a good thing, but that destiny was supposed to be set in stone ever since Alfia fell hopelessly in love with Belle. It was the normal course of things, even logical, I see. When Zald managed to slightly rejoin the course of action, he coughed discreetly while nodding. And this girl, is she exactly like the description Alfia gave you? It is. Zald played with fire, afraid of getting burned. Perhaps she was doing an excellent job of maintaining her composure, but it was logical that Alfia was dying inside. Zald concluded that he had very bad luck. The gods certainly have a twisted sense of humor. Is there really anyone who looks like Alfia? I feel a little sorry for her. Again, Zald coughed a little, trying not to show his true thoughts. Well, I'm dying to meet her, I guess. I know they'll like her. She's super nice. Yeah, something that needed to be clarified was that Alfia wasn't the only one who maintained a facade of cheerfulness. Haruheim forced a smile to mask her sadness. She too had been deeply hurt when Alfia informed her of Belle's affair with a woman who was neither of them. Night fell, and everyone was expectant and quite nervous to meet the woman who had captured Belle's heart. With the exception of Alfia, who had already seen her, everyone was quite perplexed when they saw Armid, who was literally a portrait of Alfia without the charm of maturity. XXX. The night breeze blew under the pale moonlight. The night was cloudless, revealing a vast sea of stars. Under such a work of nature, Belle faced his entire family. Family, I present to you Armidson. He wore the most serious expression he had ever shown in his life. No one expected to see him so tense and nervous. Nice to meet you. Beside her stood Armid, equally nervous. She wore a silver blouse with purple decorations, a perfect contrast to the night and enhancing her beauty. A pair of nude stockings covered her legs and a handbag hung from her shoulder. Her hair cascaded down her sides like silver waterfalls, overflowing with a captivating scent. My name is Armid Tezenair, a friend of Belson. It was quite clear how much effort she had put into dressing for the occasion. She looked incredibly beautiful, and that fact alone spoke volumes about the seriousness with which she had come. His usual expressionless face had vanished on the way to Belle's house, where his entire family was waiting for him. She was aware that they were still friends, but she knew perfectly well that the reason she was getting to know Belle's family was precisely to stop being just friends. The pleasure is all mine, Armid-sama. Master Belle has told me a great deal about you, and I can say that just as he said, you are very beautiful. Haruheim was the first to approach. She wore an innocent and graceful smile, similar to the shrine maidens. Armid had to make a great effort to appear calm in front of a beauty like Haruheim. He spoke in a soft tone. You're Haruheimson, right? I hope Belson didn't say anything strange about me. No, it wasn't anything like that. Haruheim extended her arm and Armid took it. They exchanged greetings without incident, which made Belle let out an inward sigh. My grandson certainly has a good eye. You have my blessing to marry Belle, young lady. Oh no, thank you. The introduction to Zeus was odd in itself, but Armid described him as an overly animated grandpa. Now she understood where Belle had gotten some of his peculiar personality from. Well, you can call me uncle. You're dating, right? You seem like a nice girl. Please look after Belle. He tends to be a little insensitive to his surroundings, and that gets him into trouble. Zald flashed a brotherly smile as he extended his hand, admitting that Armid did indeed bear a strong resemblance to Alfia. Armid, on the other hand, took Zald's hand while shaking her head with a shy smile. We're not dating, we're friends. Although yes, I'll make sure to keep an eye on him from time to time. I don't like seeing him cause trouble either. The blush on her cheeks made her look quite pretty, so Zald nodded with satisfaction. She was a good girl, no doubt. Yes, thanks. Belle noticed Armid blush when she denied being boyfriend and girlfriend and practically burst into tears at how adorable she was when she refused to accept reality. The fact that everything was going so well made him happy, and all the nervousness from before was gradually fading away. Then it was Alfia's turn. Armid swallowed hard when she saw her. Belson told me a lot about her, but it's very different seeing her in person. She's Alfia-sama, known as the most powerful adventurer in history. Nor was Alfia a complete stranger to Armid. Due to their rather similar appearance, she was inevitably compared to her. For Armid, who was just a girl born into a normal family, it was quite difficult to live when so many people pointed at her and commented on her resemblance to a woman she didn't know. She's beautiful, Armid thought. I'm very similar to her, but so different. Her aura of maturity and glamour makes her look like a goddess. Hello, nice to meet you. For the first time, Armid couldn't suppress her nervous hesitation in front of Alfia. She commanded so much respect and admiration for her dignified demeanor that it was difficult for her to think clearly. No, don't ruin it. This is important to Belle and me too. I can't mess it up. His actions differed from his thoughts. He felt like he would start sweating and tearing up soon, but suddenly his chin was resting on Alfia's shoulder. Hey. Alfia was hugging her, there was no doubt about that fact. Zald, Haruheim, Zeus, and even Belle. All of them couldn't keep their jaws closed, showing their clear surprise and bewilderment. Nice to meet you, Armid. Belle has told me a lot about you. Alfia gently took Armid in her arms. Thanks to that, Armid was able to feel a feeling that was difficult to describe. She felt accepted by the highest authority. Alfia, thank you for making him smile like that, Armid. But she also felt rejected, like the villain in a children's story. Yes, it wasn't anything. She didn't know how to react to it, but she understood that Alfia had mixed feelings about the closeness she was creating with Belle. He even began to think that he was in danger. This turned out much better than planned, didn't it? Well, what are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate. Belle's lively interruption made the pressure dissipate from Armid's chest. They all shared brief smiles before nodding. Mayach and Naza, who already knew Armid, joined the party along with their newest companions, Cassandra and Daphne. Armidson, how are you? Well. Each of them was talking to someone, and Belle obviously was next to Armid. They had both stayed at the back of the group so they could talk more freely. You have a big family, Belson. Armid gave him a lovely smile. Charming Belle, yes I know. By the way, how much have you told them about me? That's it, well, we're almost boyfriend and girlfriend. Armid stared at him, rolling her eyes, suppressing a scream. Instead, she admonished him in a low voice, a slight blush creeping across her face. I would appreciate it if you didn't jump to conclusions, Belson. But that's what we are, right? No, we're not. We're friends, please understand. You say that, but you're holding my hand. Are you shy, Armidson, T-fool? In fact, they were walking hand in hand. The feeling of holding hands under the starry night sky was quite rewarding for Armid, who was experiencing something like this for the first time. Deep down, she felt comfortable with everything that was happening. Perhaps it was only the beginning, but she sincerely hoped that tonight's dinner would end well. Oh, it's the white-haired boy who saw Ryu naked. Welcome, your reservation is ready. However, there were many things to discover about his almost something. What did he say? She looked at Belle for an answer, and she wasn't the only one. Alfia and Haruheim displayed sharp gazes capable of cutting through the hardest steel. Ahaha. Belle, on the other hand, could only smile foolishly while scratching his head. XXX. It was decided that for the sake of dinner, the topic of Belle seeing Ryu naked on the 18th floor would be temporarily set aside. They were all seated along a large table laden with lavish dishes, with more of them being brought in by Anya, Sir, Ryu, and Ranoa. Mayach was drinking quietly with Naza, chatting amongst themselves. Cassandra was doing the same with Daphne. The atmosphere was calm and relaxed, free from interruptions thanks to the fact that it was a full reservation. So how did you two meet? Zald asked. Alfia had been silent since the beginning of dinner, and Zeus was busy casting rather blatant glances at all the waitresses. She couldn't count on them to lighten the mood. It was a beautiful night, Belle began. It was when I fought against Freya's children. I came out of the place badly wounded and collapsed in an alley, completely dying. Oh really? That was a lie, but Zald didn't dare say it. It was also adorable to see how Haruheim was completely absorbed in the story. And while she tried to hide it, Alfia did the same. Yes, I was on the verge of death. Belle continued cheerfully. She wore a bright smile that contrasted with the sparkle in her eyes and her expensive attire. I thought my end was inevitable, but then like an angel saving a poor devil, she arrived. Everyone's attention turned to Armid when she was pointed out. From the blank expression etched on her face, they could tell that Belle was exaggerating things to suit her own taste. She extended her hand and offered help, and then when our eyes met, I proposed to her and she accepted. I refused, and much of what he just said is a lie. Armidson, I know you're embarrassed, but you don't have to go to such extremes, but it's the truth. You were covered in blood. I just asked if you were okay, and you proposed to me. Then I refused and left. The truth was revealed by Armid's brutality. Although they had agreed not to discuss the matter, she seemed upset by what Anya had said. Hence his ruthless words, Belle surmised. Not that he could complain. He already felt lucky enough not to have been impaled by Alfia, Armid, and Haruheim. And Haruheim hesitated, feeling embarrassed. How did you find each other again? He came to my clinic one day where he proposed to me again and I rejected him. Armid took charge, pinching Belle's leg under the table so he wouldn't dare distort history. Alfia, noticing this, frowned. She was already quite annoyed since hearing about Belle's first rejection. If he had asked me, we would already be on our honeymoon, she thought sadly. She was quite down about how things had turned out, but she understood that there was nothing she could do anymore. He only paid attention to the story Armid was telling. She helped me a lot with the ingredients for my products, and I'm very grateful for that. Also, we signed a contract, and we've been seeing each other almost daily ever since. Alfia thought she wasn't a bad girl. She was embarrassed when she talked about Belle's bold advances and flirtatious attitude, and even became annoyed when she recounted the times Belle did things wrong. Really? Alfia looked at her. In her eyes, sorrow and joy were shown combined. If it's her, maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe I can rest easy. She was sure they'd have a good relationship. She was happy for Belle, but she couldn't help feeling the emptiness in her heart growing larger every day. Do you love him? Finally, when spirits were at their peak, Alfia asked. Everyone remained silent at her question because they knew it wasn't for them but for Armid. They both looked into each other's eyes. Bell looked expectantly at Armid, who was sitting next to him. I'm not sure. He wasn't discouraged by the vague answer he heard, he just smiled gently. Armid looked embarrassed and confused, unsure where to look. Aren't you sure? Alfia asked. The look in his eyes revealed a certain annoyance and irritation. Bell noticed this but remained silent, as did everyone else. They understood that only Armid had the right to speak. Yes, that's why I asked if we could start as friends. I want to discover my feelings for Belson. That was quite vague to Alfia. She was giving up her love for Bell, and all she asked was that whoever had that love would appreciate it as it should be. However, here was Armid doubting his intentions towards his beloved nephew. Auntie, I don't think we should put too much pressure on ourselves, haha. She was about to say she disapproved of the relationship, but Belle intervened before she could. She gave a nervous smile as she placed her hand on Armid's shoulder, trying to comfort her. Alfia saw that in silence without saying anything. That comfort was supposed to be for her, not for the indecisive woman in front of her. Yes, it doesn't matter. I was just a little curious, excuse my inappropriate persistence. Ah no, it's fine. Armid smiled weakly. He didn't know what it was, but an oppressive feeling pressed against his chest when he looked at Alfia. Did I make a mistake? Everyone in the family knew that Alfia had held back because of Belle, and Armid began to suspect the same. It was clear that she was attracted to Belle, but she wanted to take things at a pace that she could keep up with and not rush things, fearing she might ruin it. But in trying to be careful, I ended up doing something stupid, if it weren't for Belle. No one could imagine what Alfia would have said or done if Belle hadn't intervened. Armid knew this well, just as she knew how important this meeting was to him, and he seemed quite happy to introduce her to his loved ones. Well, how about a toast to the future couple? Zald intervened to lighten the tense atmosphere, raising his mug of foamy beer in the air. Yes, for the future couple. Belle did not hold back his excitement and raised his wine glass, looking at Armid with a somewhat flirtatious and pretentious attitude. Health. Sensing that gaze and the intentions, Armid raised her non-alcoholic drink and toasted. It was very important to note the blush on her cheeks. Whoa, he really lifted it. Well, what are you waiting for? Cheers, health. Since then, the atmosphere has been much better than expected. Funny stories about Belle's childhood were shared, such as rescuing Haruheim and his extreme battle with the Minotaur. The origin of Trainee also came to light, something that left Armid fascinated and with mixed feelings. Something else he couldn't watch with a smile was how two waitresses kept staring at him. Ryu and Sir, am I being jealous? No, I don't think this is jealousy. It was a feeling of possession, but she didn't know it yet. What she did eventually learn was that Belle was extremely popular, and yet he had chosen her above all others. XXX. The party ended with Zeus being carried by Zald, Mayach by Naza, and Cassandra by Daphne. They had drunk to the point of passing out, and now they were all ready to go home. Alfia, like a proper lady, was still perfectly lucid. She had drunk, but no more than a couple of glasses to ease her sorrows. I had a lot of fun tonight, I'd like to do it again. Armid approached Alfia with those words, receiving a critical look. However, a second later she received a hug. Armid thought this was Alfia's approval, but she couldn't have been more wrong. With her close by and taking advantage of the fact that Belle was thanking Mamma Mia and the waitresses, Alfia murmured in a cold tone in Armid's ear. If you harm him, I will dismember you limb by limb and throw you into the depths of the dungeon. Cold sweat ran down Armid's back. He knew the feeling right now. It was just like the day he tried to plead for the Evolus members in front of Belle. The same pressure and the same coldness. Discover your feelings soon, because the day you stop bringing that smile to her lips, I'll come for you. Nothing in the world can protect you, not even Belle. She couldn't move or breathe. Her heart was beating so hard that her pulse became hot, causing her discomfort and an intense headache. Understood, he wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He just nodded frantically so as not to keep Alfia waiting. Good, I'm glad you understand. Alfia took a short breath before smiling gently. She stopped hugging Armid and simply held her shoulders, giving them light touches as a farewell. We'll meet again sometime, Armid. Yes, Miss Alfia. Alfia nodded and turned around, going to join Haruheim. She had stayed a few meters away, waiting for her. And of course, sending the same message to Armid with a look devoid of her characteristic charm and innocence. Armid noticed the look and understood the message, swallowing slightly. Her body trembled and she couldn't stop sweating. She could only silently and completely terrified watch the backs of the two women who had given her an ultimatum. Belson, you shouldn't have left me alone, she thought. He also firmly believed that he had two women who cared deeply for him, and while that was dangerous for her, it pleased her in a way. My beloved Armidson, I've returned. At that moment, Bell made his entrance. He had just finished thanking Mamma Mia and the girls, as well as apologizing to Ryu again for the past. Belson. Huh, you're trembling, are you okay? She wasn't. She looked like a puppy in the cold rain at night, frightened by the lightning and thunder. Why, yes, I am. However, she couldn't just say it. She had to silently withstand the terrifying threats and prove that she would never make Belle unhappy. But Belle wasn't fooled. He looked in the direction his family had gone, catching a glimpse of Alfia and Haruheim's backs walking side by side. Then he turned back to Armid with a look that was both saddened and serious. They said something to you, didn't they? I'm sorry, they tend to be a little protective, but they're not bad people. I'm sure they'll become good friends, just give them some time. Armid opened her eyes, astonished. Belle was supposed to be insensitive and clueless about these things, but he turned out to be quite the opposite. If only she knew it was thanks to the teachings of a certain elf, she wouldn't be so surprised. It seems that I made them angry with my declaration about my feelings. I know I'm attracted to you and to the way you care about people. You're someone who hides their kindness behind a mask of indifference and nonchalance, trying not to draw attention to yourself. I really like that part of you, Belson. Armid took Belle's hands, feeling their warmth. She took a step forward, trying to get closer and find refuge in his arms. That's why I want to take this at a pace I can keep up with. I'm inexperienced and I don't want to mess it up. He came closer. Belle separated his hands and took her in a gentle embrace, his arms around her waist. Armid did the same, then looked at him, a fearful look. Belle's gentle expression was reflected in her eyes as he gazed at her with love. But if that makes you unhappy, if I stop bringing a smile to your lips, like the one you always have when you come to see me, SHH, it's okay, it's okay. Belle placed one of his hands on Armid's head, pressing it against his chest. Listen to my heart, Armidson, listen to how it beats for you. Armid closed her eyes and listened to Belle's heartbeat. It was a fairly calm rhythm that made her sleepy. It's so soft, is that so? Yes, your heartbeat is gentle, Belson. A couple of minutes passed like this and Armid finally managed to regain her composure. The unexpected threat from Alfia and Haruheim had disturbed her to the point that she became quite bold with Belle hugging him. She felt quite embarrassed, but she couldn't just push him away abruptly because she liked the feeling of hugging him. She felt safe in his arms, protected and loved. Armidson, yeah, can I hear your heartbeat? That's how it was until Belle said that. She looked up, meeting his gaze. That alone was enough to know his true intentions. Don't you just want to press your face against my chest? You got me. The ease and shamelessness with which he admitted guilt was irritating, and Armid wanted to give him a good whack for ruining such a pleasant atmosphere. Get away, pervert. I was just kidding. I really want to hear your heartbeat. Armid turned his back on him and started walking. She didn't care that Belle fell to his knees and dramatically extended his arm towards her, and without even turning back to look at him, she spoke. I'm going home now. But it's very late and it could be dangerous to walk alone. Someone could attack me. It would be amazing if someone could accompany me, and also a very kind gesture. A second later, Belle's dejected expression lit up. That's a hint, right? He stood up quickly and ran towards Armid, walking right beside her in a guarded stance. The aura he exuded would frighten even the Balor. May I hold your hand? He asked cautiously. Armid beside him cast a questioning glance. Reason, that way I can protect you more effectively in case someone jumps out of the alleys to attack you. That was quite absurd. One would have to be crazy enough and hopelessly suicidal to attack a woman walking hand in hand with Belle, who was known as untouchable. But Armid didn't seem so convinced. She simply gave a thoughtful and rather adorable expression, glancing sideways at Belle. Oh well, also because I like the feeling of holding your hands, it makes me happy. Armid remained silent, averting her gaze. A blush could be seen covering her cheeks, illuminated by the pale moonlight. The way her hair absorbed that same light gave her an aura of divinity. Believe. Slowly they held hands. That's a good reason. It wasn't just Armid, Belle also blushed, absorbed in Armid's beauty. They walked silently through the streets under the moonlight, enjoying the warmth of each other's hands. XXX. They decided to take a seat halfway along the same bench where the beginning of their almost something had started. Holding hands and looking everywhere but at each other, they enjoyed the silence that filled the square. Only the sound of the fountain and the night wind were present. After a few minutes like this, Armid finally spoke. What exactly happened in Riviera when you saw that naked elf? Belle trembled slightly. He glanced to his side where Armid was pouting. In fact, something like this was expected when she suddenly asked them to sit down and chat and spend time together under the pleasant night sky, but it was still quite problematic. About Riviera. She smiled nervously, hoping Armid would back down and forget about the matter. Yes, about Riviera, but Armid didn't back down. She was determined to learn every detail about that day, the day Belle had seen a woman naked. I'm not jealous, it just annoys me a little. She said to herself, well, the truth is I don't remember much. I'm not interested in any woman's body other than yours, so I didn't pay any attention. Don't use this situation as an excuse to reveal your perverse intentions towards me, you degenerate. The situation was problematic but not serious. Belle had many ways of dealing with Armid, who blushed at any hint of flirting. Besides letting him see her adorable reaction, he also let her avoid a cruel interrogation. Get away from me, I won't let you see my body. That's too cruel, isn't it? So how are we supposed to have children? Children. Armid's face turned bright red. Without a second thought, she pulled away from Belle and let go of his hand, completely embarrassed by the sudden and unexpected mention of children. Yes, children. Belle, on the other hand, seemed quite serious about the matter. He took Armid's hands again and looked at her with all the seriousness in the world. I want 7 children, S7. Armid's imagination took flight. She imagined herself surrounded by small creatures with white and silver hair screaming and crying. Belle, of course, was lying on the sofa. He couldn't stand it and exploded. Her body gave way and she fell to the side, caught by Belle. He looked at her, a little worried, wondering if Armid's fever was normal. She treated her with her healing magic, but the temperature did not decrease. Belle, you killed her. Did I kill her? Yes, this girl is in a trance. Zusama knows what's going on inside her head. She wasn't so saintly after all. Trainee, show some respect. Ja, go to hell. You can't complain to me after using me for 3 days straight, and then putting me into hibernation for a week. Belle frowned, worried. He thought that perhaps he had taken his joke too far and now he was facing the consequences with Armid passed out in his lap. He looked at her for several minutes, contemplating her beauty and waiting for her to wake up, which happened after several more minutes. She slowly opened her eyes, showing confusion as she looked at Belle with a slight drowsiness. Why are you stroking my hair? Why not? You look so defenseless and beautiful. Be grateful I didn't kiss you. How shameless. Only with you? Armid looked away, completely embarrassed. She tried to hide the blush on her cheeks, but nothing escaped Belle's notice. He smiled mischievously when he saw her all red. Maybe I feel a little jealous. About Rivera, that's quite unexpected. Why the sudden honesty? Although it's rather sweet that you're jealous of me, silly Armid buffoon. She got up from Belle's lap and sat down beside him, trying to straighten her posture. And unexpectedly, she felt it was a shame to stop feeling Belle's caresses in her hair. It's not jealousy. She shook off her thoughts and spoke. She seemed quite serious about it, but the blush on her face detracted greatly from her credibility. While playing with his fingers, he explained. It's just a little annoying, she said, almost murmuring to herself. I think it bothers me that there's a possibility of something between us and you've been intimate with someone else. What? That's jealousy, my beloved Armidson. Shut up. If I say it's not jealousy, it's not jealousy, and dominant too, I like it. For a moment, Armid thought about getting up and leaving the idiot who wasn't taking anything seriously, but she took a breath to calm herself. She also tried to make her blush disappear. I'm serious. I think I like exclusivity. I would appreciate it if you would keep that in mind. Belle remained silent. He thought about the word exclusivity and the meaning behind it. In fact, he thought it was incredible that Armid was being honest about her feelings. There weren't many women who admitted something of that magnitude so easily. I know, he said, now in a serious tone. He looked Armid in the eyes, never ceasing to appreciate their beauty. I appreciate your honesty. I find it incredible that you share your thoughts with me. It's a very valuable show of trust. I can also guarantee you exclusivity. The two were lost in each other's gaze. The crickets chirped, the fountain water gurgled, the wind whistled. In an atmosphere where the leaves of the tree that sheltered them rustled together, Belle and Armid stared at each other intently. They were so absorbed in themselves that even if the whole city exploded, none of them would notice. I can assure you of the same, Armid whispered, caressing Belle's cheeks with her breath. The closeness increased. The night was cold, but the warmth of their hands provided enough heat to not affect them. Yes, I know. What are you doing so close to me, trying to kiss you? Armid bit her lips. She blinked and took a deep breath, moving away from Belle. Her whole face was completely red. We're friends. Friends don't do that. I heard from my grandfather that there is something called friends with benefits. Pervert. I was just kidding. Please wait, Armidson. When he was brutally and mercilessly batted out, Belle stopped joking and grabbed Armid's arm, preventing him from leaving. She had been ready to leave Belle there. Of course, she thought Belle's intentionally perverted behavior was in bad taste, but she also found it kind of cute to watch. Of course, as long as he wasn't a real pervert. He was only cute if he was faking it to make her angry. It's late, he said, standing and looking in the direction of his house. Well, yes, it is. I'll go with you. Someone might attack you. I already said that excuse. Come up with your own. Belle laughed at that. They held hands and started walking, chatting about nothing in particular. Well, not quite. Armid mentioned a new idea she was planning to develop and Belle gave his approval, offering his help. By the way, that was his mistake, she said. My spiritual magic can serve as a reference for you. I will help you. And then Armid remembered the story of how Belle met Trainee. You've already given your first kiss, right? Yeah, right, and I took it, suffer. Trainee's taunt wasn't pleasant for Belle, who froze for a second, but only for a second. A moment later, he displayed a carefree expression as he gave his answer. I wouldn't say give up. It was stolen after all. Besides, I was going to die, you know. Your jealousy is cute, but do you really prefer my death to my first kiss? It's not jealousy, Armid retorted with a pout, denying reality. I just asked a question, and no, I don't want you dead, you fool. Is that so? Belle smiled. Well, yes, my first kiss has already been taken. They were almost at Armid's house, so they stopped at a corner. There, under the light of a street lamp, Belle took her in his arms, pulling her close to his chest. Armid blushed but looked at him with some animosity as she asked, What are you doing? Belle gave him a mischievous, rather flirtatious smile. In her opinion, it made him look very attractive. Well, I thought maybe you'd like to rewrite that kiss. And how exactly would you do that? Armid knew it but played along. Her chest was pounding and Belle, thanks to their proximity, noticed it. Gently he explained what didn't need explaining, kissing me. The world stopped. It was just the two of them inside a space without sound, color, or texture. The sound was the beating of their hearts, the color was the pink of their lips and the red of their eyes, while the texture was the warmth born from the embrace they were giving each other. Yes, maybe I should. Bell opened his eyes. He felt himself losing his breath, his senses, and everything else he possessed. Such was the power of Armid's words over him. It became even more critical when Armid closed her eyes and began to approach. She looked quite cute using her toes to approach Bell, and he was in complete chaos, not knowing what to do. Her breath caught in her throat when she looked at Armid's lips, full and overflowing with a soft pink. Her heart pounding wildly, she closed her eyes. Only a few seconds passed before he felt a soft, wet touch on his cheek, a sensation that momentarily left him in a trance. When he opened his eyes, he was met with Armid's shy gaze. Although she looked embarrassed, she had a rather bold smile on her lips as if she enjoyed Bell's nervousness. This is in gratitude for walking me home. Good evening, Belson. After that, he gently stepped aside and walked home. Belle looked at her silently, enjoying one last time how beautiful she looked in casual clothes. Maybe he took a quick look at her backside, but it was very quick. He kissed me. It was on the cheek, it's not a big deal. But he kissed me. He let out a love-struck sigh when Armid finally closed the door and disappeared from his sight. He thought that tonight had been the best night of all. XXX. 2 weeks later, Welf finished his best creation, Bell's weapons. They were a pair of hand rings called gauntlets. The material was a mineral called tungsten, whose hardness was far greater than any metal ever seen before. It had been found by Bell on the 67th floor. Besides being meticulously crafted and molded, it had been imbued with spiritual magic as its primary element. If the damage accumulation effect was taken into account, it could easily be classified as a masterpiece. Hephaestus Sama, that's why he was in Hephaestus' office showing him his creation. As promised, I expect an impartial judgment from you, and if you are worthy, accept my love. Hephaestus' face turned as red as beets. The crimson of his hair paled in comparison to the bright red that flooded his face. It only took looking at him once. It was a work that surpassed her best creations as an earthly goddess without divine power. How did you get it? A new metal discovered on the 67th floor. I also managed to add my own effect and pure spiritual energy. It's lovely. When Hephaestus said that, Welf smiled triumphantly. He only needed to see his goddess's face to know that he had finally succeeded, to overcome her and at the same time to make her fall in love with him. So about the Hephaestus looked away, trying to appear calm. In truth, her chest was pounding like crazy. She harbored loving feelings for Welf, of course, but she firmly believed that love between gods and mortals was tragic. What was a lifetime for them was a moment for her, an instant that passed in the blink of an eye. That's why I set him an impossible goal, but here he is at the finish line. Do you love me that much, Welf? She looked at the child, no, at the man in front of her who was looking at her with love. A burning love whose flames crackled with strength and intensity. If you agree with me. Slowly she stood up and faced Welf. The blush adorning her cheeks made her look truly beautiful. Okay, I'll accept your love, Hephaestus. Without hesitation, Welf took her in his arms, encircling her waist and caressing her cheek. Their breaths mingled against each other's faces. They looked directly at each other, their lips brushing, feeling the friction of skin beneath their clothes. I love you, and I love you, Welf. Welf took the initiative and kissed her. He pressed his lips to hers in a passionate kiss that Hephaestus didn't bother to resist. He gladly accepted it, enjoying the warm, moist sensation. The atmosphere intensified. Soon they were exploring each other's bodies with their hands. Welf rubbed Hephaestus's breasts, and she, between excited gasps, ran her hands over Welf's broad, muscular back. The office became a place to keep secrets. They made sure to lock the door and gave free rein to their emotions, going beyond a simple kiss. Welf made her his wife, and Hephaestus made him his husband. XXX. Unlike the passionate relationship between Welf and Hephaestus, Bell and Armid moved at their own pace. Casual dates became a daily routine. Sometimes they went on picnics in Riviera, other times they explored the middle floors, and many other times they simply admired the beautiful scenery of the water city. Although the dungeon was not a place where love could flourish, Bell was able to make a date happen. He was fascinated to see the amazed expression on Armid's face every time he looked at landscapes he had never seen before. Now that it was summer, they had come to the 61st floor to make snowmen. Look, he looks like you. That's a rabbit. Fufu, yes it is. Armid wore a coral-colored winter outfit. The scarf around her neck was a gift from Bell himself, as was the wool hat covering her hair and ears from the cold. A rather cute appearance, and one that could eliminate the annoyance of being compared to a handmade snow bunny. The snow is incredible, Armid commented, noticing how her breath was visible. It reminds me of your hair, although your hair is a purer white. Do you like my hair? Yes, it's nice. Bell smiled, a little embarrassed. He felt quite proud of himself for having gotten Armid to be a bit more honest about her feelings in just 2 weeks. If I compared the indifferent expression she had when they first met with the soft, smiling expression Armid was making right now, the change was incredible. I like your hair too, it's beautiful, Belle said, approaching Ahmed. Your eyes are beautiful too, your smile and your body. Thank you, I think. Hey, you're being cold, aren't you? That's because we're in the middle of the snow. While that joke is really bad, Belle complained, displaying a bitter smile. She was also wearing a coat and a hat handmade by Ahmed herself. I know, Ahmed said with a mocking yet serious smile. They both laughed at it, falling backward onto the snowy field. Second on the list was making snow angels, but they stopped probing their arms when their hands met. They were wearing gloves, of course, but the feeling of holding hands remained the same. I'm a little cold, Ahmed murmured. Belle's senses sharpened as he recalled his teacher's lessons. He read the room. They were in a cold place and fully bundled up, so thinking the obvious was the right answer. Come. Boldly he pulled Ahmed towards him, taking her in his arms. She did not struggle and let herself be embraced, smiling gently at the feeling of protection she felt when Belle held her in his arms. While they were enjoying the warmth they were providing themselves, Belle asked in a determined and rather serious tone, Ahmedson, can we make our relationship official? I'm pretty sure of my feelings and I'd like to take things a step further between us. Ahmed snuggled against Belle's chest, not responding. It wasn't really necessary as her heart beat in response. If that's what you want, I suppose I can't refuse. A feeling of relief washed over Belle. He felt all the anxiety and fear of rejection vanish from his body. Somehow, Ahmed's acceptance had given her several more years of life. Thank you, it really makes me happy to hear it. I feel the same way. I guess we're dating now, right? It sounds nice when you say it out loud. Come on, say it again. Don't make fun of me, we're over. Not even 5 minutes have passed, Belle exclaimed in complete panic. How easily a relationship could end terrified him so much that he thought he might die of fright. Well, Ahmed threw a little tantrum trying to get away from Belle, but it wasn't strong enough to break the hug. After a few minutes of pampering her and apologizing, everything returned to normal. You can stop using honorifics if you want, she said, still embarrassed. Well, I feel the same way. I'd like you to call me by my name only. You first. Ahmed, come on, it's your turn. Belle's quick action left her momentarily in a trance, but Ahmed managed to recover an instant later. Curling up into a ball against Belle's chest, her lips moved sweetly and sang delicately. Belle, it's too cute. I'm dying. Stop being so dramatic, you idiot. When Ahmed punched him in the chest, Belle laughed uproariously, spreading the snow around him. The cold sensation it left made him exhale a puff of white smoke. The ceiling of this floor seemed to disappear, but it was actually made of magical crystals, creating the illusion of a snowy sky. The view was beautiful, the moment was beautiful, and their company was the most wonderful thing in the world. He felt fulfilled and had nothing to ask of the world. Belle, yes, my lovely girlfriend. Ahmed rested on his chest. He called her softly, but when he called her girlfriend, she became embarrassed and hid. For 1 second she'd peek out, but the next she'd hide it. She was charmingly adorable. Can you say that again? My pretty girlfriend, yeah. Her lips curved tenderly. She seemed to enjoy being called girlfriend, her cheeks twitching and her eyebrows ruffling cutely. Mewfufu. What, whoa, that's charmingly adorable. Belle was speechless when Ahmed began rubbing her face against his chest. It was a new side of him that he had just discovered, but one that he didn't dislike at all. In fact, he was about to die of a heart attack. Ahmed's tenderness was deadly to him, a madly in love man. Several minutes passed like this as they enjoyed each other's embrace and the scent of their bodies. Ahmed in particular seemed fascinated by Belle's fruity aroma. Then, as she enjoyed Belle's warmth and scent, Ahmed's expression suddenly changed. He asked in a serious tone, Hey, there's something I've wanted to ask for a while now. What is it? He hesitated for a second, but then, unable to fight his curiosity, he asked firmly, Why did you fall in love with me? I know you have a lot of women after you. There are goddesses on that long list. Of course, I know I'm not bad-looking, but I still ask myself the same thing every night before I go to sleep. Why me? What's so special about me? What did I do to get your attention? Ahmed looked up, seeing Belle. He showed a genuine desire to know, so Belle had no choice but to respond appropriately. Giving a gentle smile and a kind look, she replied, Obviously, it's because. Chapter 22, It's not me. You can't just walk into someone's life, make them love you, and then leave. You don't do things like that, especially not when you come in to give hope to their pathetic life. Ahmed Tezenaire. Loving him only causes me pain. The certainty of knowing that it is not really me whom he loves is a dagger that wounds me more each day. The initial excitement of wanting it gradually turns into frustration. I tell myself I should forget about it, but it's difficult after all this time. Of all things, the smiles, flirty jokes, her eyes, just everything about him makes it difficult. Because in the end we were like the moon and the sun in an eclipse, unique and beautiful but not eternal. It was on one of the many dates we had over time. I remember we were at a picnic, sitting on a blanket piled high with homemade food. The coolness of the grass below, the breeze that made her hair dance beautifully, the cold but beautiful smile, the subtle but enchanting gaze. What do you mean by impossible dream? I asked. She tilted her head. It was a gesture that made her look so sweet, so much so that it almost gave me a heart attack. After seemingly considering it, she answered softly. Her voice was gentle, as was her face. Her expression was that of someone laughing at her own words. I've never seen snow. Ever since I was a child, I've wanted to make snowmen, snow angels, and have a snowball fight. People glowed when they expressed their desires. That's what Amante was doing at that very moment. She shone brighter than anyone else. She shone with a perfect radiance as she confided one of her wishes to me. Then let's go, I'll take you to see the snow. Her eyes widened. The distinct color of her eyes flashed momentarily, glowing with surprise and bewilderment. I continued. My lips curled unconsciously. Let's make snowmen. Let's make snow angels. Let's have a snowball fight. He was silent for a second, but the next, free from his bewilderment, he nodded while smiling. The wind blew, her hair danced, her lips curved. A piece of art was drawn without the need for brushes right in front of my eyes. Yes, let's go tomorrow, I'll be ready. I was filled with hope. I'll have excuses to hug you, I know, but I think I'd be annoyed if you ran out of excuses. I was moved. It was different from the times I faced death in a battle with powerful adversaries. It was different, distinct, and it was better. The icy wind from the 61st floor hit my face. I was holding Amante by the hands, which were covered with gloves. Why me? What's so special about me? What did I do to catch your attention? Even though he was wearing gloves, I could feel the warmth of his hands. His pulse was intense and feverish to the point of madness. Her eyes stared at me, waiting for my answer. Obviously, it's because I read his expression. Anxious, almost eager to know what he would say. I paused for a moment when I saw her like that, hoping for an answer that would make her cry with happiness. Perhaps she believed I could see something in her that she herself was unaware of. Of course I did, but not before we deepened our relationship and got to know each other more thoroughly. It was after talking, and not after proposing marriage in an alley under the dark night, that I was able to notice the wonderful qualities she possessed as a person. I froze, stunned by her beauty and anticipation. What should I say to her? I had a strange feeling that something wasn't right, and Trainee was unusually quiet. Whenever I was there, bad things always happened, at least in my personal experience. I remembered the reason for my love for her, the reason I fell in love at first sight, proposing something as absurd as marriage. Belle, what was happening? I was short of breath, it felt heavy in my lungs. Amante tilted her head slightly, looking at me curiously. I couldn't stop looking at her, trying to think of a response. I should lie, I thought. Maybe then I wouldn't have this strange feeling suffocating my chest, silently squeezing it. No, I shouldn't lie. I had to tell the truth, even if I had a repulsive feeling about it. Then, looking into her eyes, which shone like stars in the sky, I said, "You fit the description of the ideal woman for me according to my Aunt Alfia." For a moment, I had a tempestuous urge to bite my tongue and stop myself from speaking, but I didn't. I didn't know why, but the feeling grew more intense and repulsive with every word I uttered. But I was able to understand it shortly afterwards. Just 1 second. A mere second was enough for Amante's beautiful expression to shatter into pieces, leaving her confused and unable to understand my words. The light in her eyes faded like the stars at dawn. Upon seeing her, panic took hold of me. I exclaimed nervously, exhaling white smoke from my mouth. My aunt said that if I wanted a girlfriend, she had to be like you. No, I mean she had to look like you. Wait, not that either. What are you saying? There was no way to put it in gentle words, because whatever I thought of, it sounded terribly wrong. I knew it when I noticed Amante's trembling hands, as well as her pupils dancing between jerks within her eyes, radiating a kind of trance that broke my heart. I held her tightly, fearing that she might want to break away from me. I felt like a child, really. There I was, not knowing what to say to make it sound nice, with anxiety gnawing at me from the inside. My aunt said that the ideal woman should have silver hair, heterochromatic eyes like silence, and that. In the end, I ended up taking all the nonsensical words that surfaced in my thoughts and putting them together into what was the worst sentence to explain the reason for your attraction to the girl you like. It wasn't hard to understand just by looking at her. A woman like me. I swallowed, watching as her confused face changed to one that seemed to understand the whole picture of the matter. Gradually, she showed a pained expression with a hint of fear. "Explain it, please." I couldn't refuse, so I explained slowly. Every second, or rather, every word he said made her back away, moving further away. Not feeling the warmth of her hands squeezed my heart, but I didn't have the courage to step forward and take them. Not when she was looking at me like that, her eyes wet with tears. "It wasn't me," she murmured, and then the tears spread, reaching her cheeks. The place was so cold it threatened to freeze them, but Amante kept crying. She didn't seem annoyed, but hurt and utterly broken. I almost thought I heard something break inside her chest, and all I could do was stammer foolishly. "What?" I asked, confused. Wasn't it her? I didn't understand what she was trying to tell me, and I didn't have time to understand it either. All my thoughts were focused on finding a way to make her stop crying and showing me an image that made me want to tear my eyes out. "It wasn't me, shout." Her voice rose higher than it ever had before, and the cry full of lament resounded above the winter blizzard of this floor, echoing along with the air. Then he began to rant wildly against me. "Are you saying you like me because your aunt described me? Is that really love? Amante, you're misunderstanding everything. Don't come any closer." I froze instantly, unable to move my body. Unconsciously, he was acting in the best way to prevent Armid from exploding if it wasn't already doing so. "Your love for me," she exclaimed, stopping mid-sentence. Her expression twisted in pain, showing that she herself hadn't meant to say what she was about to say. But he did, and in doing so he broke my heart. "Your love is fake." I don't know how much time passed, but the fact that she herself questioned the love I had for her made me nauseous and gave me a terrible headache. "Your feelings were manipulated by your aunt. What are you talking about?" Soon, I realized that Armid was bringing to light something I had long tried to ignore, so, as a defensive reaction, I stepped forward to stop her. I said, "Don't come near me, you liar." But I was stopped again by her shout, which was imbued with anger, as well as a slight resentment towards someone who betrayed your trust or expectations. I was able to understand her to a certain extent, and even I was surprised myself by the clear feeling of discomfort when she mentioned my aunt so casually. I had a strong urge to shout at him, "Don't talk about her." However, I was able to effectively suppress it. "Armid, let's talk." Silence surrounded us both, with nothing but the icy wind hitting our faces, which showed a certain discomfort about the matter. Shortly afterwards, Armid shook his head from side to side, looking at me with a slight, silent fury. Then he asked, "Take me back to the surface." "Armid, please. If you don't do it, I'll do it myself." I remained silent in the face of that threat. She knew perfectly well that I would never let her expose herself to the slightest danger, especially when we were on the 61st floor, an area unknown to those other than the Hera family, the Zeus family, Armid, and myself. The dangers here, mainly the absurd level of the monsters, were on a completely different scale than the floors above. "Okay," I murmured, feeling my voice crack. "Let's go back." Yeah, after that, Armid didn't speak to me once during the entire journey back to the surface, lost in her thoughts and with a heavy silence around her. When I tried to take her hand, she pulled it away as if some kind of pervert was trying to touch her, and that alone made me want to burst into tears. The pain in my chest grew throughout our journey after a date that ended in complete failure, and when I tried to vent to the monsters, I didn't get any feeling of relief. Thus, we finally reached the first floor of the dungeon, and then Armid walked past me without even giving me a glance or saying goodbye. Not being able to see her usual shy smile every time we finished a date made me clench my fists, standing there and doing nothing but watching her walk away from me. I lowered my gaze, thinking about what I could have done wrong for everything to end in this bitter way. "You should think about it, Belle." Then I heard his voice, and immediately I looked up, like a desperate child looking for his parents after getting lost in Daedalus Street. That's how strong my need was for Armid to give me a chance to explain everything, and to let me hold her in my arms while I asked for her forgiveness. However, it was completely different from what I thought. If I gave you a description exactly like the one your aunt gave you about the ideal girl for you, who would come to mind? He looked coldly over his shoulder as he said that in a monotone, showing his clear displeasure as well as a self-deprecating, ironic smile. When the thought crossed my mind to say to him, "Of course I would think of you," I stopped myself when I realized what that implied. She seemed to notice and resumed her walk, going up the stairs that led to the surface and getting rid of the scarf, coat, and hat I gave her. "Bye-bye." I stood still, taking one last look at her back. My chest tightened painfully, causing a strange sensation of wanting to fall to my knees and scream. Nor could he destroy this place, which little by little began to fill with the traffic of adventurers coming down or returning from their activities in the dungeon. I paid no attention to their curious and bewildered looks. I just shut myself away in my own world, not knowing what to do or say. Well, this was bound to happen sooner or later. Don't get discouraged, just go to the person who's on your mind and ask for an explanation. It will be up to you to decide what to do after that. Trainee's advice didn't offer me any comfort, but it was true that she was right. What I had to do now was go to my aunt and talk about what I'd been fearing for so long. The journey was longer than any other he had experienced so far. Between his hurried pace and his jumbled thoughts, Belle found even the sun's rays and the breeze blowing through the streets irritatingly bothersome. The voices of the people around him were like the sound of a chalkboard being scratched with nails. He wasn't sure he could resist hitting someone if they got in his way in his desperate search for answers. Fortunately, nothing similar happened and he arrived home without incident. Inside, Haruheim was knitting a doll that looked strangely like him in front of the fireplace, while Zeus and Zald were talking in the kitchen. "Where is my aunt?" Her voice echoed throughout the room. But she didn't need a reply as her aunt's refined voice reached her from beside her. "Belle, I thought you'd be away for a few days. What's up?" Alfia was on the sofa in front of the window. She was holding a book in her hands and wearing her usual gothic attire. Belle turned back to see her immediately. He ignored how mentally unwell he was, unable to perceive his aunt's presence, and walked slowly but surely, standing in front of her. The ideal woman for me. It would be difficult to understand the situation with just that, but Alfia didn't tilt her head in doubt. She simply squinted, noticing Belle's altered state. He looked at the others and did not hesitate to give an order. "Out." Her tone wasn't loud, and yet there was no one else besides Belle and her in less than 5 seconds. Zeus, Zald, and Haruheim weren't idiots. From the start, they had noticed Belle's strange behavior. He had called his aunt in a curt tone instead of running to hug her as usual. "So you realized," Alfia sighed. He placed the book on the table next to the sofa and tapped the free cushion beside him, signaling Belle to take a seat. However, Belle ignored that instruction. Is it really true? What exactly? Don't try to play games with me. Alfia remained silent, sharpening her gaze at Belle's already expected scream. If he were to count the times his beloved nephew raised his voice in protest, it would amount to only 2. And yet, he still couldn't get used to the pain it caused in his chest. He looked sadly at Belle, who was trembling so much he might collapse at any moment. His eyes shone with mixed emotions. Among them was the feeling of betrayal by the person he trusted most. Alfia could only remain silent, fixing her gaze on Belle's. Did you describe yourself that time? Were you referring to yourself when you talked about the ideal woman for me? Belle's voice seemed to crack. It was unusual for him to show such a weak image, being possibly the strongest human alive today. There were no rivals, no challengers who dared to stand before him and ask for a duel. Because he was the strongest, the outcome was more than predictable. But now, as his whole being trembled, he couldn't feel any weaker. Alfia looked away for a second, clenching her hands into fists and taking a breath to gather her strength. As he did so, he stood up and approached Belle, who remained motionless like a statue awaiting a response. Yes, I did. For some time now I don't want to hear it. Belle took a couple of steps back. His head was a mess and his thoughts were spinning like a tornado, unable to stop and let him think straight. I was confused. She'd had her suspicions for some time, which she'd ignored, trying to convince herself they were just her imagination. However, here she was, standing before her aunt and hearing the truth in her own words. What else could he do but collapse? He remembered the loving gaze that Alfia gave him every day, a love he believed was that of a mother towards her son. Was that really a woman's love for a man? Huff. Belle, don't come any closer, I won't. The nights of bathing where they washed each other's bodies. The affectionate touch which he thought was maternal affection was in reality adulterous affection. Did it have to be this way? That someone sensitive to glances and intentions would be deceived by no one but himself? The massages, her moans, the feel of her skin, and the curvy appearance of her body. All the scenarios flooded his thoughts, now seeing them as they truly were. The essence of Alfia's actions turned out to be a woman's love for a man, a woman who was herself, and a man who was Belle, her own nephew. His legs gave way and he fell to his knees. The wooden floor cracked, sending up splinters that tried to pierce his trousers. Belle, no, I didn't. Alfia stopped trying to hug and comfort him. She knew exactly what would happen if she did, so she held back as she watched her beloved nephew collapse. Belle grabbed her hair, thinking that if she pulled it out, perhaps she would wake up from her dream. Amante, maybe he would wake up next to that girl, the girl whose heart he broke in this bad dream, but it wasn't a dream. The reality was that his aunt's love was not maternal and that Amante's heart was hurt by how stupid he was to take so long to understand things. No, not this, no, I won't. Belle's figure grew smaller and smaller. The world seemed terrifying to him. It was vast and oppressive, and its truths acted cruelly toward those who did not understand the essence of people. He thought he had done it, he really thought so. However, he wasn't even able to see the love for him in his own aunt's eyes. You didn't have the right. His voice broke into weak words after nearly half an hour of silence. He looked at Alfia from his position like a believer kneeling before his God. You had no right to manipulate my feelings. I'm your nephew, we're family, you're my mother's sister whom I don't even remember. I thought you were like my mother. Alfia looked away, sadness in her eyes. It hurt her, that's true. The way she saw it, she never thought there could be so much sadness in happiness. Her feelings had finally been noticed, but she didn't feel the happiness she had imagined. That was because of Belle's kneeling figure looking at her with resentment. There were few things as deafening as the silent resentment in her eyes. She had never begged for anything in her life, but she silently pleaded with Belle to stand up and hug her, to care for her, to whisper in her ear that he loved her too. She always looked at him intently, hoping he would notice what her heart felt. He treated him like no one else, hoping he would notice that it was only about him and no one else. She blew kisses into the air, hoping that the breeze of her love would carry them to her mouth. She wrote, she waited and continued waiting, hoping that one day he would come knocking down the door and fill her with his love. She always waited for an answer which never came. Alfia was also silently collapsing. Not everything makes a sound when it breaks. Some things collapse completely in absolute silence. But did she have to fall without saying a word? Was there really nothing she could claim? There was something, of course there was something. All those times we got close, while I saw it as something familiar, you. The star in her eyes, a star she couldn't stop looking at, now shone threateningly towards her. Of course, Alfia wanted to look away and run far away from reality. If only she could give Belle the ability to see himself through her eyes, only then would he realize how special he was to her. Because now that she could tell him everything, she couldn't find the words. The lump in her throat tightened so much that more than being in her throat, it seemed to cling to her soul. Perhaps I should accept Belle's complaints and let him go. There are feelings that are better left in the platonic realm, and it is better to remember them that way, unreal, unfinished, because that is what makes them perfect. But Alfia didn't want that. She longed to believe in her dream. Dreaming was essential, and it might be the only real thing that existed. If that was real, then his feelings were real too. Because of this, because of what you manipulated, I hurt Amante. I hurt her. Because of you, because of your strange love for me. What right did you have? What would my mother say? Are you really my Fami? What? Bell's words were interrupted by a slap. He stared dazedly at the wall, feeling the burning sensation on his cheek. The chaos in his head did not cease. The pain intensified both in his chest and his cheek, and his eyes trembled wildly as he tried to focus on Alfia's face. She looked at him coldly. Her multicolored eyes emitted an intense feeling of annoyance and anger. I hate to contradict you, but I didn't fall in love with you because my days were lacking something. On the contrary, I had so much that I thought it would be good to share it with you. So don't you dare question the bond that unites us, Belle. You want to blame me? Go ahead. Can't we be together because we're family? Of course we can, because you can't complete a puzzle with identical pieces. Did you hurt that girl? I couldn't care less. How can you be so? I can be whatever I want, you idiot. Why did you fall in love with her when she barely knows the color of your eyes and I've counted all your eyelashes? Alfia walked towards Belle. The sound of her footsteps echoed loudly, making the wooden floor creak. When she was close, she bent down and grabbed Belle by the neck to stand him up, bringing him as close to her as possible, so close that their noses touched. Is it really wrong that I fell in love with you? It's fine if everyone judges me, I don't care, but you. You more than anyone should understand me, you idiot. Alfia's voice rose more than an octave. It was unusual to see her shout, especially when she put so much feeling into her voice. Are we family? Am I your aunt? Are you my nephew? I couldn't care less about any of that, you fool. I still love you though, and don't look for something as stupid as a reason to love someone. What you're saying makes no sense. It doesn't have to make sense. I love you and you won't change that even if you restart the world. Even after giving in and accepting your love for that girl, now you come and blame me. I'm sure it was your fault. I've been suffering in silence, enduring and suppressing my feelings. How do you expect me to take it when you come and blame me for everything? Know that. Take some responsibility. You're the one who shouldn't have touched that girl's heart when your hands are stained with lies. You're the one to blame. The greatest act of cowardice anyone can commit is to awaken someone's love without intending to love them back. And you've already done it twice. Teetwise, I don't even know what I did to awaken your love for me, and it was your fault that I went looking for Amante. It was supposed to be me. Why her? You had me by your side for 15 years. Do you know the pain I felt seeing you seek love in someone else, someone who wasn't supposed to exist but me? It's not fair. Is it my fault for getting so lost in the depths of your eyes that I forgot you weren't looking into mine? It's still unfair. No, wait, that's it. Why her and not me? Why did you fall in love with her and not me? What's wrong with me? How could you be happier with her than with me? Can you imagine how excited my heart gets when it comes to you? There's no one else I can look at. Belle was speechless at the deluge of emotions and feelings from Alfia, who looked at him with teary eyes and an expression of pain. What should I do now? Now she really started to cry, something I had never seen before. Tears fell from her eyes and ran down her cheeks until they reached her chin and slowly trickled down her neck. He didn't seem to be crying for what he was crying about, but for all the things he hadn't cried about when he should have been. He wanted to hug her, but he questioned whether that was appropriate. Now he felt like crying, but the tears never came. It was that kind of sickening sadness where he couldn't possibly feel any worse. They were suffering, and there wasn't a single firefly to bring an end to the darkness. None of them said a word, and anyone would think they were on the verge of becoming omniscient. This is based on the premise that silence is the beginning of wisdom, but it was also the beginning of suffering. Say something. Alfia's grip loosened, freeing Belle. They didn't separate, nor did he fall to his knees again. He was no longer in her hands. Alfia looked at him, hoping for at least a murmur from him, but nothing happened. Belle stared blankly into space, giving the impression of not hearing or feeling anything. As he stood, he was no different from a statue. Alfia gently bit her lip and gathered strength in one of her arms. She raised it and cupped Belle's cheek right where she had slapped him a short while ago. The sting of the blow still lingered in her, but so did her characteristic warmth. Despite stroking him, Belle still didn't react. He was truly lost in thought, or perhaps not even in thought. He was simply lost. Alfia's gaze softened. The tears lost their force, and little by little they began to dry on the skin of her face. His other hand grew stronger and pressed against Belle's chest. The beating of his heart and the warmth of his cheek made Alfia get lost too. They were two people who were lost despite being right in front of each other. I'm sorry, I haven't been a good aunt to you. Alfia approached slowly, feeling Belle's faint breathing. First, she felt their noses touch, and after adjusting her position, the touch of his lips. He had kissed her. The kiss was the light that illuminated the dark path Belle was on. The sparkle in his eyes, which seemed to have faded due to the uncertainty of not knowing what to do, returned. It took him a moment to process it, but he took a step back as he touched his lips with his fingertips and stared blankly at Alfia, who looked away with a shy blush on her cheeks. What? It's proof of my love. It's not fake. Alfia's appearance was beautiful. Anyone who saw her would fall to their knees and propose, surrendering their life to such a perfect work of art. But Belle was his nephew and Alfia was his aunt. The shock of being kissed on the lips, those who had not experienced the touch of others before, was immensely great. She took another step back, then another, followed by another. Her weak breathing became heavy and erratic, and all she could do was retreat to the door and run. Bell wait, fleeing from an answer as well as from the love that awaited him every day at home. I ran out into the street, pushing through the crowd. There was too much noise, words pouring from their mouths into my ears, the sound of their hearts, the exhalation of their breaths, the noise of their shoes hitting the pavement. Everything was too noisy. I went through the chaos and reached my destination. I was short of breath, I couldn't breathe properly. My lungs were trying, but the problem was with me, not them. I couldn't breathe properly. My chest throbbed with pain, beads of cold sweat trickled down my forehead and back, spreading an uncomfortable tingling sensation throughout my body. I put my hands on my knees and looked at the place in front of me. It wasn't late, not even midday. People were still constantly passing by, but even so there was a sign hanging on the glass doors, closed. The Amante pharmacy, normally open 24 hours, was closed. Of course, I told myself, only someone indifferent to their emotions would be able to run their business as if nothing had happened, as if having a broken heart didn't exist. Let's go. Despite knowing it, I screamed loudly. Please, Amante, open up. I shouted his name over and over again. People passing by stared at me as if I were crazy. My pitiful appearance was reflected in their eyes. They passed by whispering mocking remarks to me whom they thought was crazy. I didn't say anything to them, it didn't matter. Maybe I was crazy trying to fix something that I myself broke, even after having the specifications on how to use it. Let's talk. Night came too quickly for my liking. It was raining. People ran at the slightest sign of rain, but I stayed put. The gentle rain turned into a small storm. Strong winds whipped through my wet hair, sending drops of water caressing my face. My vision blurred and cleared each time water touched my eyes, which remained fixed on the closed sign. No matter how many times I screamed, how many days I waited, Amante didn't come out. The idea of breaking in crossed my mind, but it quickly faded. The thought lingered in my mind that, at the very least, I should respect that. I slammed the whiskey bottle onto the wooden table, empty like the others lying on the floor. I had no idea how much time had passed. Maybe it was a week, maybe even a month since I left home and didn't return. Nobody came to get me, maybe on my aunt's orders. No, I didn't even know if it was right to call her aunt. Not her, who manipulated my feelings from a young age for her own convenience. And that's what happened. Ah, damn love. I looked at my best friend Welf. He stared at me blankly, picking up the liquor bottles scattered on the floor and mopping the floor as he listened to my story for the 1000th time. Sometimes he would even correct the parts where I made mistakes or add things that never actually happened. He would also finish the sentences I was halfway through. I looked at the floor and the movement of the mop while I thought about that. Was that vomit? No, maybe it was something else. Friend, brother, I tried to catch up with Welf, but he quickly moved away. Maybe it was the alcohol, but my reflexes and movements were awful. What should I do? Am I supposed to forget Amante? There's also that manipulative woman who played with my heart without a second thought. Old man, what should I do? Give me some advice. Welf ignored my words. He was a good listener, but the worst person to have a conversation with. I remember hearing him say something like, taking care of a drunk is worse than hell if you're not just as drunk as he is. Maybe he was right, so I tried to get him to drink with me, but he refused. Even he. Well, I could understand that, dear. The voice of the person in charge reached my ears. I slowly turned my eyes toward her, the goddess Hephaestus, and looked at her with a furrowed brow. She was the reason Welf didn't accompany me in my misery. Yes, let's go to bed, it's late. I'm sorry, I have to take care of Bell. I think it's impossible for him to die from alcohol, but if I leave him alone, he might try to commit suicide. Can't you just call his family? He's been here for 2 weeks now and he hasn't even showered. Well, I squinted, cautiously eyeing the woman with the eye patch and red hair. She glared at me cruelly, like someone who saw an obstacle in their heck's life. I'm sorry, okay? It's not like I want to be a third wheel, damn it. I didn't like him either. If I hadn't come here, I wouldn't have known about the relationship between those two. Did that witch know it was thanks to me that they could be together? I used up so much spiritual energy on those weapons. But as they say, people are often ungrateful. Sorry, love, just for today, okay? When Welf said that, I smiled maliciously at the goddess with the eye patch and red hair. She saw me, wrinkled her face, and turned away with an annoyed air about her. His back disappeared behind him as he slammed the door shut, and once again it was just my best friend and me. Old. Welf took a chair and sat down opposite me. His eyes, previously empty, now showed a slight hint of concern. You must stop. What's the point of this? Getting drunk won't change things, and neither will complaining about it. I looked down. The strength in my hand, which was about to take another bottle of liquor, vanished. He was drunk, yes, but he could still think clearly. Perhaps that was one of the advantages of having an A in abnormal endurance. I had to drink abnormal amounts just to feel a little dizzy and keep drinking so that the effect wouldn't go away in a matter of minutes. The minutes passed and the toxins in my body gradually disappeared. Meanwhile, I listened to Welf in silence. I have nothing to say about Miss Alfia, but as for Amante, I'm sure you're already aware that it's impossible to salvage your relationship. Even if it wasn't your intention, breaking her heart doesn't change that. What's the point of trying to harm yourself with alcohol? You know perfectly well that all the alcohol in the world isn't enough to kill you. So what are you looking for in drinking? Do you think it will answer your questions, solve your problems? Do you think it will magically fix the things you've messed up? No, that's not it, I think. Old Welf placed his hand on my shoulder. He exerted some force just enough to make me pay attention. Time doesn't heal, what heals is what you do with time, so stop wasting it. If you hurt someone, apologize, offer your remorse, and never expect to be forgiven. That's something you have to do, not the person you hurt. Do you want to be forgiven without first forgiving yourself? Dude, think for a second, she said, smiling, giving me the advice I had been asking for so many days. So he wasn't looking down on me. I knew I was being a nuisance, but I didn't pay it any mind because he didn't seem interested. However, he had listened to me until the end and now he was giving me some advice. I lowered my gaze. I called him my best friend, but I never really meant it that way. I mostly just got close to him because I could. I admit I wasn't the best at understanding and respecting people's feelings. I always did what I thought was best without caring if someone ended up hating me for it. Similar to the time I hit a father because he didn't trust me to treat his sick daughter. Even as the girl smiled with relief at the pain disappearing from her body, the man wept as he hugged his daughter without seeing me or saying goodbye, as if it didn't exist. I often told myself that as long as the result was good, the affection of the people I helped was the least important thing. I still believe that. I don't do things to receive a thank you, piles of money, or someone's love. Everything I've done is because since I was little, a woman told me it was my duty to help those in need. But Welf, yes friend, I could have done things better, right? Welf closed his eyes and nodded with a sincere smile. Yes, but don't get discouraged. Not every day is good, but there's always something good in every day. To that end, I let my head fall onto the wood. He understood that and stood up, leaving through the same door as the goddess with the eye patch and red hair. After hearing the sound of the door closing, I sobbed softly. In the end, it was not the sword of a powerful adversary or the claws of a formidable monster. What hurt my heart ended up being my own stupidity. 3 days later, I returned to the Amante clinic, not with shame or embarrassment on your face, much less with large amounts of alcohol in your blood. I just went and knocked, hello, and I was received. Armid's eyes peered through the opening in the door and frame, greeting us in a soft, muffled tone. Something to point out were the dark circles under her eyes, indicating the few hours of sleep she had. I stood there silently, looking at her and saying nothing. Honestly, I came expecting to be ignored again, so everything I had planned to say vanished like mist in the sunlight. Armid narrowed his eyes. Aren't you going to say anything? Okay, goodbye, wait, I reacted instinctively and jammed the door shut with the toe of my boot. Armid looked at me silently at my shout before opening the door completely. Happens, I was confused. Seeing her act so calm after what I did to her surprised me and filled me with a strange feeling of unease. What was happening? Armid gently indicated the path, which I obediently followed. I had rarely seen her so serious, so indifferent to her surroundings, similar to the night I met her. What? Please take a seat. We arrived at his room. The first time I went up to the second floor of the pharmacy and into her room was, ironically, in a situation where we were no longer romantically involved. Wasn't this the moment when a man pounced on his girl? Well, now he was sitting there waiting for her to speak. Do you have a yes please 1 minute? Armid turned her back on me and left the room, returning a few minutes later. Seeing her act this way was making me more than nervous. I could feel panic and anxiety taking over my body as I kept cracking my knuckles even after I had already cracked them a couple of times. It was frustrating not to hear the sound of bones cracking anymore. I felt that while Armid was serving tea for 2 people. Bell SSI, I remembered this feeling trapped, trying to breathe and failing. The pressure I felt on my body was the same I felt when my aunt discovered my diary as a child. However, this time I couldn't escape. Do you love me? Memories of my childhood and days as a fugitive vanished at Armid's question. My mind went blank, of course. Hearing her ask something like that directly was shocking. I didn't know what to say at that moment, but I forced myself to take control. Yes, I love you. Armid smiled as if she had been expecting that answer. As soon as her lips curved gently, she asked, why do you love me? A question I was expecting. I lowered my gaze and clenched my hands into fists. Among the thousands of answers, none were good enough to cover up the ugly reason for my love for Armid. When he looked up and saw her again, his eyes were no longer indifferent. They held a deep glimmer of sadness and sorrow. I figured, he murmured, you still don't have an answer. It's not your fault. I thought a lot during these weeks, far too long for my liking, and I came to the conclusion that I unfortunately fell in love with you. The cruelty of her words took me by surprise. She didn't seem like herself. I cried a lot. Realizing that the boy I fell in love with was drawn to me because of some strange description from his aunt almost drove me crazy. I told myself that since you didn't have bad intentions, then things could work out between us. Although, of course, I imagined that if we were a couple, I'd never be able to get Miss Alfia out of my mind. Even when I was with you, I wouldn't stop comparing myself to her and feeling uncomfortable with the idea of acting like a doppelganger of hers for you. It's messed up. I know I love you, but I also know I won't be completely happy with you. No matter what, I must choose my peace of mind above all else. I held my breath. As Welf said, I didn't come here hoping to be forgiven and make amends. I wasn't seeking forgiveness, but instead I offered an apology. However, listening to her hurt me. Ermid wasn't well either. The watery shine in her eyes began to intensify, and slowly tears sprang from the corner in small, glistening pearls running down her cheeks. His voice wasn't entirely clear either. I had most of you, but now I have nothing. It's hard for me. I'm even crying so pathetically. Ermid. Bell, my hands placed on the table were taken. As I listened to the sound of the ceramic breaking, I felt her desperate touch. Then I looked into her eyes, which were asking me for something. With tears on her face, her lips moved tremulously. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Is it too much to ask you to take me back to the night we met? If it's possible, if you can do it, then would it be strange to accept that ring and be your wife? Can we meet again somewhere far from here? I've missed you all these days, and although my heart longs to be by your side, my rational side tells me it will clearly be a disaster. Between remaining silent or taking her in my arms, I remained silent. He had no right to act. He had no right to anything, only to listen to her vent what she had surely kept bottled up for so many weeks. The order of things didn't even make sense. More likely, he was just talking about what he was gradually remembering. Her hands trembled. I could feel it from the force with which she gripped mine, as if she were afraid I would suddenly pull away. Then came a silence followed by a soft laugh. I looked sadly at the image of Ermid laughing at herself. Can I tell you something, Belle? You're quite popular with women, so much so that it's strange. There are even surveys, and they showed that the reason so many women like you is because you're cool. Pretty silly, isn't it? These are women who don't give emotions the respect they deserve, and instead they use them carelessly. Her grip on my hands loosened, and slowly they slid away again. Seated across the small table that separated us, she gazed intently at me. On the other hand, I didn't like you because you're great, you're only great because I like you. I silently gazed at Ermid's smile. There was no blush on her cheeks, a few tears still welled up in her eyes, and her gaze still exuded sadness. I gazed intently at her beauty. Love. It's like when you wake up one morning and see fog after the sun has risen. It's like that brief moment before it burns away. Love is a fog that burns away with the first ray of light of reality, and right now, Ermid's smile was burning away. I understood that even if she asked me to continue our relationship, I wouldn't be able to accept it. Yes, that's right. Ermid seemed to understand my thoughts as if she could read them written on my forehead. The smile faded, it was no longer on her lips. Only her eyes, covered by tears, smiled kindly. Throughout all of this, I wondered what kind of expression did I have that allowed her to read my thoughts as if they were an open book. These past few days, she said softly, I've constantly wondered if meeting you was worth it. Every single time, without exception, I've instantly told myself yes. We didn't have a happy ending, but we smiled every day we spent together, and for that alone, it was worth it. If I regret anything, it's that you didn't choose me, but I. No, Ermid abruptly interrupted my words. I said that even if she asked me to continue, I wouldn't be able to accept it. But here I was, swimming desperately when I felt the water enter my lungs. She spoke cruelly about the end of our story, and I could only listen in silence, unable to refute anything. I wanted to tell her to be quiet and come to me, to lie down on my chest and feel how my heartbeats spoke to her of love, that they would say everything I couldn't tell her, but I didn't say anything. I just looked at her and she looked at me. She never stopped looking at me. Believe me, you haven't chosen me. It would be more accurate to say that you can't choose me. How could you when you don't even have the right? It's complicated, but despite regretting that you didn't choose me, it doesn't mean I want to be chosen. Ermid stood up as he spoke and walked to the bed, taking a grip on the edge of the mattress and patting the right side. Come here, please. I stood up and sat down next to her, close enough that I could smell the fragrance of her body. This is the most mature way I could think of to say goodbye. Don't you have anything to say about it? I'll listen. Finally, my moment arrived. After listening to her, it was now my turn to say what I came here to say in the first place. Because despite the pain, loving also means knowing how to let go. Maybe I just chose the wrong life, so maybe in another. I'm aware that I made a mistake, I murmured with difficulty, my throat dry. I suppose it was a mistake I had to make. The moment I said that, Ermid hit me, not on the cheek nor on my crotch. His fist, delicate as silk, gently struck my shoulder. I looked at her reflexively, and while she smiled at me, she asked, was breaking my heart something you had to do? It was not a happy smile, and alongside it, tears bloomed from her eyes like daisies in spring. I stammered when I saw her, noticing the weight of my words. She saw that understanding in my eyes and shrugged. That's okay. Fortunately, there's always another day, and other dreams, and other laughs, and other people, and other things. Even my apologies were pathetic. Despite thinking about it for so many hours, my words did not take into account Ermid's feelings. What a disaster I was. Ermid sighed at the mess and tugged on my shirt sleeve, making my eyes reflexively turn towards her. Understand? Yes. Can you give me one last hug? My body acted before I even asked it to, and I pulled Ermid into a hug. I buried her face in my chest, savoring one last time the warmth and softness of her body. She seemed frozen, but soon her arms wrapped around my back and exerted enough force to let me know that this hug should last a little longer than usual. Despite my clothes, I could still feel the warmth of his breath on my chest, as well as the slight tremor of his lips pressed against the fabric of my clothing. Slowly, one last time, Ermid sobbed like a child lost in the woods, stifling her sobs against my chest. Her hands, which were clutching my back, trembled uncontrollably. I thought I was ready to let you go. Her broken voice broke me. Everything I had held back until now burst forth mercilessly. Tears welled up in the corners of my eyes, falling onto Ermid's silver hair. It seems that I'll die thinking that if I ever see you again, I won't hug you because we no longer belong to each other, and it's not like strangers to go around giving away their souls in the street. So one last time, hug me tight, Belle. Yeah, right now I was letting her go. Not because I wanted to, but because she asked me to, and I promised myself I would always fulfill her wishes. That's love for you, I guess. I don't even know if it's right to call all of this love. The truth is, I became deeply interested in the woman in my arms, to the point that I felt a special connection I'd never felt with anyone else. If that wasn't love, then I don't know what is. What was certain was our end. Time passed. We paid no attention and hugged each other for a long time, feeling our breaths and the beating of our hearts. There isn't enough time in the world to say goodbye, that's what I felt. I also felt the movement of Ermid. Slowly, his arms left my back and took hold of my neck, slowly sliding up until he cupped my cheeks. She pulled her face away from my chest and looked up. Her eyes, glistening faintly from the traces of tears, stared at me intently. Her cheeks were painted a pretty pink mixed with the marks of her crying, and her lips pursed forward, going towards mine. I did not resist his intentions. His advance continued until I could feel the warm breath escaping between the small opening of his lips, and the closeness allowed me to see in detail the clustered lines on the fleshy outer rim of his mouth, until I lost sight of them and felt a unique touch on my lips. Its edges collided with mine a couple of times, creating a hypnotic crackle capable of making me lose my mind as soon as I let my guard down. I closed my eyes reflexively. The sensation intensified as I did so, and Ermid moved his lips over mine one last time, overlapping them slowly and gently before pulling away. When I opened my eyes, still feeling the warmth and moisture of her lips on mine, there she was, looking at me sadly. I'll keep this as a souvenir, you don't mind, do you? I shook my head gently. This was the end. It didn't matter if I was the strongest or if I could do almost anything, I couldn't stop the end from coming for us. And that was fine. Even if I could do something, if she didn't want to, I didn't have the right. Can I ask you one last thing? I nodded quickly. I was listening to her and at the same time recording every detail of her face, every tone of her voice, and every sparkle in her eyes, as well as the blush on her cheeks, the dancing movement of her eyelashes, and the purse of her lips. Can we sleep together? You don't have to stay, you can leave once I've fallen asleep. I just want you to hold me and not say anything. I hugged her and pulled her close to my body, letting us fall onto the bed. Ermid closed her eyes. Her soft breathing, fragrant scent, and the warmth of her body slowly burned into my skin. As she requested, I said nothing and left when she fell asleep, tucking her in before leaving in the middle of the night. The image of her waking up the next morning was something I could only imagine.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.